Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Alicia Canales McGuire. Alicia Canales McGuire was born on October 29, 1992, in Mount Vernon, Washington, to Manuel and Michelle Canales. Growing up on a farm, she learned the value of hard work and often returned to her family's farm to help. Spending time with loved ones is essential to Alicia. She talks to them often. Alicia lives in Birdsview with her husband Bradley, whom she married in a beach ceremony at Deception Pass in July 2017. She had just gotten married 2 months ago, and Alicia is excited about having her own family. Her sister, Amanda Canales, who has 3 children, is about to go on a business trip to New York and asks Alicia to babysit while she is away. Alicia happily agrees because she loves her nieces and nephews. Alicia has been taking care of her grandchildren with an in-house nanny. When the nanny heard the gunshots, she rushed to check. She found Alicia dead at the door. The nanny immediately called 911, asking for help. When the police arrived, they began searching the house to make sure the perpetrator was no longer inside. The police verified that only the nanny and Amanda's children were present. After the children were safely removed from the house, the police began collecting evidence. A car was parked in front of the house near where Alicia was shot, with shell casings nearby, indicating that the shooter had been next to the car, near the front door. Several bullets were lodged in the door frame, and Alicia's body was lying face down outside the door. The crime did not appear to be a robbery, as the house was undisturbed and there were no signs of forced entry. This led the police to wonder who might have wanted to kill Alicia and why. However, police attention was diverted when they learned that the house belonged to Alicia's sister, Amanda. They began to consider the possibility of mistaken identity, suspecting that Amanda might have been the intended target. But Amanda was in New York at the time of the shooting. The nanny, who was in the house when the shooting occurred, was questioned by police. They asked her if she had seen the shooter or knew anyone who might have wanted to harm Alicia. The nanny reported that she was upstairs when she heard the gunshots. When she ran downstairs, she found Alicia lying face down and unconscious on the floor. Unfortunately, the nanny did not see the shooter. Alicia's acquaintances told the police that Alicia seemed to get along well with her husband, Bradley. However, she gave the police a crucial clue when she mentioned that Alicia's sister, Amanda, was having problems with her ex-husband, Kevin Lewis. After reviewing reports from the local sheriff's office, the police discovered that they had been called to Amanda and Kevin's address several times before, all in connection with domestic disputes. The police found this information particularly interesting and decided to investigate further. Before dawn, they visited Kevin at his home in another part of Everett. When they knocked on the door, Kevin opened the door, looking as if he had just woken up. During the conversation, the officers asked Kevin if he knew where Amanda was, and he replied that she should be home. The police questioned Kevin about his whereabouts the night before. He claimed to have gone home, saying that his sister and mother would confirm his alibi. He did not ask why the police were there. When they told him that there had been a shooting in the house where his children lived, he showed no emotion, which was unusual for a father. He should have asked if his children were okay, but he did not. When the police told him that Amanda was away on business, Kevin appeared genuinely surprised, exclaiming, "Really?" and ending the conversation. As they left, the police discovered surveillance cameras at 2 nearby homes that could help corroborate Kevin's story. After reviewing the footage, the police discovered a car parked near Kevin's driveway about 40 minutes before the attack on Alicia. The footage showed someone resembling Kevin walking out the front door, getting into the car, and driving away, contradicting Kevin's claim that he had been home all night. The recording was not clear enough to confirm the identity of the person as Kevin. To gather more information, the police reviewed footage from another camera, which gave them a closer look at the car, but did not help identify it. all they could see was that it was a light-colored car. They fast-forwarded the footage and saw the car return about 20 minutes later. However, they now noticed a crucial detail: the right front tire of this car was different from the other three. The three tires were light-colored, while the right front tire was dark. The car stopped near Kevin's house, and the same person seen in the first footage got out of the car and walked back to the house. Whoever this man was, he had entered the house about 20 minutes before the 911 call about a shooting started coming in. The car then drove away and never returned. It was a 15-minute drive from Kevin's house to Amanda's, meaning the car had enough time to get to Amanda's house, or it may not have been involved in the shooting. Amanda first learned of younger sister Alicia's death when her father called her, just hours after the tragedy. Amanda was in New York at the time, away from her family. Alicia's death was especially devastating, as she had recently married and was looking forward to starting a family of her own. When police questioned Amanda about potential suspects, she immediately pointed to her ex-husband Kevin as the likely culprit. During their 8 years together, Amanda endured physical abuse, leaving her bruised. Even after their divorce in June 2017, Kevin's behavior did not change. He continued to threaten Amanda, causing her to fear for her safety. Following a court ruling in August 2017, Amanda was awarded full custody of their 3 young children. The court ordered Kevin to pay $800 a month. This marked a new beginning for Amanda, as she rebuilt her life in Everett, Washington. Surrounded by the love and support of her family, Amanda overcame the challenges of being a single mother. Kevin threatened Amanda, saying he would kill her. As a former soldier, he had been trained. Amanda believed she was the target of the attack, but younger sister died. She even obtained a restraining order against Kevin, but he violated the order several times. Kevin frequently loitered outside her home, peering through windows and instilling fear in Amanda and her 3 children. Although he ignored the restraining order, he was never charged by the police. In one particularly disturbing incident just weeks before her sister was murdered, Amanda was brutally beaten as she got out of her car. She was returning home late at night and had parked in the driveway next to her house. She didn't see the attacker's face because the attack happened so suddenly, but she was certain Kevin was the culprit. Kevin Lewis, 30, was initially the prime suspect in the death of Alicia Canales-McGuire. Police believed he was targeting his ex-wife. However, Kevin did not know Amanda was in New York, nor did he know Alicia was babysitting Amanda's children while she was away. Police found discrepancies. If the person in the video was indeed Kevin, he would have been home during the entire time of the shooting. Furthermore, his sister and mother had provided Kevin with a solid alibi. Therefore, the police continued to investigate and look into what happened. Upon returning to Amanda's home, the police re-examined the crime scene. Ballistics experts determined that Alicia was shot with the door partially open. The shooter fired at least 7 shots from outside the house, then fired inside. Evidence at the crime scene showed that the shooter fired multiple shots while standing next to the garage, then moved toward the door and fired again from inside. Alicia's autopsy revealed that she died from multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso, with a total of 5 shots hitting her. 2 of the shots caused gunpowder wounds, suggesting they were fired at close range. Although the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact order of the shots, it is believed that the 2 head wounds may have been the final shots. Forensic analysis confirmed that all 7 shell casings found at the scene came from the same type of gun. The wounds to Alicia's head were consistent with shots fired at close range. The shell casings found at the crime scene also caught the attention of police because the type of shell casing was uncommon. It was a Russian-made shell casing under the brand name Telamo. Since this was not a common brand, police hoped to identify the seller or buyer of the bullets. After investigating, they discovered that a Walmart store near the crime scene had sold the bullets. A Walmart representative informed police that a man had purchased the bullets and that they had surveillance footage of the transaction. After reviewing the footage, which was recorded on September 18th, 2 days before Alicia died, police thought the buyer might be Kevin. However, they were wrong, as the man in the footage was not Kevin. The buyer paid with a credit card, allowing police to obtain his name. After investigating this new lead, police found no connection between the man and Kevin, Alicia, Amanda, or the nanny. Therefore, police needed to find new evidence to move the case forward. Amanda says that at first their relationship was good, but eventually he became violent and started hitting her. The relationship ended in a messy divorce, with a restraining order and full custody of the children awarded to Amanda. Amanda was devastated to learn that it was not Alicia who died in the shooting. Believing it was a case of mistaken identity, she believed the bullets were meant for her and told the police that Kevin was the attacker. However, according to surveillance cameras, Kevin was home at the time of the shooting. During the investigation, the police reviewed the footage taken the night of Alicia's death again. Now they noticed something they had not noticed before. This low-quality recording showed Kevin leaving the house, walking to the car and getting into the back seat behind the driver. But why wasn't he in the front passenger seat? In search of an answer, the police concluded that someone else was in the front passenger seat. So, when the car pulled up in front of Kevin's house, there were probably 2 people in the car. Police had no evidence that Kevin was involved in Alicia's death, but they collected evidence of Kevin's attacks on his ex-wife Amanda and arrested him in November 2018. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and Alicia's case remains unsolved after more than a year. A breakthrough in her case came in 2019 when a woman contacted the police station with crucial information. The woman reported that she had attended a party near Spokane, where she met a girl who claimed to be involved in a murder. This girl, Angelica, bragged about being hired to commit a crime on York Road, the same location where Alicia was shot and killed. Even though Spokane is a 5-hour drive from Everett, police decided to follow up on the lead. According to the woman, Angelica mentioned that she and her boyfriend were involved in the case, saying that the victim died from a gunshot wound to the head, fired from a corner. They were hired by the children's father. Furthermore, Angelica said that they had taken the life of the wrong person. It was a case of mistaken identity. The police have never released details about this case. Only the police and family members know that Alicia was shot in the head. Considering that Angelica knew many details about the crime, the police were interested in this information. During the search for Angelica, the police discovered that her real name was Alexis Hale. On her social media profile, they found photos of her holding a 9mm pistol, which could be the murder weapon. In addition, some videos show a man in the background, identified as her boyfriend, Jaden Phelps. A video posted by Alexis on the night of Alicia's death shows her filming through the windshield of a car, analyzing traffic signs. Police were able to pinpoint the exact location of the car, about a 10-minute drive from Kevin's house. A few days after Alicia's death, police discovered a video of Jaden bragging about a large sum of money. Further investigation led them to a social media post by Jaden, where they found 5 comments, one of which was from his aunt. When they looked at her profile, they realized she was also Kevin's mother. It turned out Jaden was Kevin's cousin. Police now had enough evidence to make an arrest. The first person to be handcuffed was Alexis Hale. She screamed and said the police couldn't arrest her because she was only 17. She knew why she was being arrested and asked for a lawyer. Around the same time, police arrested Jaden in another part of town. To build their case, police analyzed phone records from both Jaden and Alexis, revealing a trip from Spokane to Everett that coincided with the shooting. Alexis did not tell police anything. Kevin is in prison, serving a 3-year sentence for assaulting Amanda. Therefore, police hoped to get some information from Jaden. Police obtained a confession and the name of the person who hired Alexis and Jaden. It was Kevin Lewis. To gather more information, the police took Jaden to the crime scene and asked him to describe what happened. Jaden began explaining how Kevin brought him there and showed him where the house was, and then Jaden took Kevin home. Jaden was then asked by the police to describe what happened when his girlfriend Alexis knocked on the door. Jaden explained that the door was ajar and Alicia stuck her head out and saw Alexis walking out the door. As Alexis was walking away, Jaden rounded the corner and started shooting. Alicia closed the door, but Jaden opened it again and continued shooting. He fired 2 more shots before Alicia was able to close the door. Jaden then said that he ran from the crime scene. Kevin Lewis was arrested on charges of aggravated murder with a firearm, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder in connection with the death of Alicia Canales-McGuire in 2017, while he was serving time for assaulting his ex-wife Amanda. The 2 people involved in the case are Jaden Phelps and Alexis Hale. Jaden, then 20, pleaded guilty to first-degree intentional homicide in July 2020 and was sentenced to 31 years in prison. Alexis, then 18, also pleaded guilty and received the 15-year sentence. During his trial, Jaden testified that he committed the crime for money and street cred. Jaden used the money Kevin paid him to get tattoos and buy a pair of Timberland boots and a Ferragamo belt. He claimed Alexis took the handgun from a family member and he split $200 with her. Kevin pleaded not guilty and went to trial later that year. The prosecution claimed that Kevin paid Jaden and Alexis $2,400 to harm his ex-wife Amanda, but that they were mistaken identities and caused Alicia's tragic death. Jaden and Alexis claimed that Kevin gave them the address. And Jaden claimed that he did not know who the target was, only the address. Jaden received the payment after dropping Kevin off at his home. Jaden and his girlfriend Alexis then returned to the location Kevin had indicated. They got out of the car and approached the house, with Jaden stopping near the garage and Alexis knocking on the front door. When Alicia answered, Alexis left and Jaden continued to fire until he ran out of ammunition. Jaden initially fired from his position near the garage and then went up to the front porch to fire the remaining shots. He pointed the gun at the house, aiming at Alicia's neck and head area. They then drove away but quickly returned, concerned that they might have left a glove at the scene. However, when they saw a police car, they turned around and left the area, using GPS directions to drive back to Spokane. The defense argued that Kevin never actually used the word kill when speaking to Jaden, and said that Kevin only said to get the target off the road. However, the prosecution countered that Kevin had a history of violence and had threatened Amanda. In November 2021, Kevin Lewis was convicted of first-degree murder after a 6-week trial, with the jury reaching a verdict in less than 3.5 hours. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole in January 2022. As part of his sentence, Kevin was also banned from contacting his ex-wife and children for the rest of his life. He is currently serving his sentence at the Washington State Prison in Walla Walla County. The case of Shanae Brooke Edwards. Shanae Brooke Edwards was born in 1989 in Warrnambool, Australia. Shanae grew up with her parents and older brother Tyson. Although her early life and upbringing are not well documented, her loved ones remembered her as an adventure seeker who loved nature, hiking, motorcycling, and animals. She was a kind-hearted, genuine person who formed deep, sincere connections with others, showing generosity, patience, love, and kindness to everyone she met. In 2019, Shanae traveled to Georgia, a country that had long fascinated her with its natural beauty, rich history, and landmarks. Her boyfriend, Maori El Sayed, a Lebanese national, had planned to join her in Georgia, but was unable to do so because the country's borders were closed to unvaccinated individuals at the time. Shanae resided in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, where she worked as an English teacher. This allowed her to support herself financially while exploring the country and visiting new destinations. She formed close bonds with like-minded friends who shared her passion for travel. On July 29, 2021, Shanae uploaded a photo to her social media profile, captioning it with the single word, joy. The image was taken during a scenic motorcycle ride, an activity she thoroughly enjoyed. The following day, July 30, 2021, Shanae decided to hike up Matatsminda, a popular tourist attraction situated in the heart of Tbilisi. According to her friends, Shanae would often take leisurely strolls in the wooded area near the mountain, and she had never encountered any issues or threats to her personal safety. On July 30, 2021, Shanae left her residence around 3:30 p.m. and was last spotted near the Church of St. Michael of Tavare, located at the foot of Mount Matatsminda, which serves as a starting point for hikers. Shanae was scheduled to meet friends at a cafe in the capital city, but she failed to appear. When attempts to reach her by phone proved unsuccessful, her friends decided to file a missing persons report with the local authorities. Meanwhile, a friend of Shanae's living in California grew concerned and placed a call to Shanae's phone. When the call was answered, Shanae could be heard screaming, "Please let me go, okay? Just let me go," indicating that she was being attacked and desperately seeking release. The call was abruptly disconnected, and when Shanae's friend tried to call back, there was no answer. There are conflicting accounts of what Shanae's friend in California did next. According to some reports, she posted an urgent message to a Facebook group comprised of expats living in Georgia, asking someone to alert the police to the disturbing phone call. Other sources claim that Shanae's friend directly contacted the Georgian police and relayed the distressing details. It is certain that within hours of Shanae making a frightening phone call, Georgian police became aware of it and began to investigate. Hundreds of police officers and volunteers were deployed to search the area, focusing on the slopes of Mount Matatsminda. The search party utilized search dogs and drones, but Shanae remained missing. By sunset, her phone was still off, and she had not visited any local hospitals. This lack of progress was ominous, as was confirmed the following day. Tragically, on July 31st, after an extensive search, 31-year-old Shanae Brooke Edwards was discovered deceased near a hiking trail. The perpetrator attempted to conceal evidence by hiding the body under tree branches and leaves. A knife, believed to be the crime weapon, was found nearby. Shanae's phone was soon discovered on the mountainside. Further inspection of the crime scene revealed an old, rusty shovel, a fireplace, used needles, and numerous empty bottles. Georgia's Interior Minister revealed to local media that the police have uncovered information not yet disclosed to the public to protect the integrity of the investigation. He assured that the ministry and police officers are doing everything possible to find the perpetrator. The forensic examination of Shanae's body revealed 13 stab wounds, with 5 in the neck area, leading the police to conclude that the perpetrator undoubtedly intended to kill the young woman. Signs of strangulation were also found on her neck. After the authorities officially confirmed Shanae's death, the media reported that the crime was motivated by lust, but the Georgian police denied this, citing the forensic medical examiner's failure to find any signs of a crime against the woman's integrity. Shanae's boyfriend, Moody El Sayed, has vowed to track down the culprit, no matter how long it takes, and exact revenge. Shanae's death was a devastating blow to her friends, and a particularly traumatic experience for her family, who lived on another continent. They faced the difficult task of transporting her body back home, while the police worked to identify the perpetrator. Although the police are directly responsible for preventing crimes and capturing criminals, in this case, there was an added concern. Georgia's billion-dollar tourism industry could be severely impacted by the fact that a tourist had lost her life in the capital city, a popular tourist destination. The police conducted an extensive investigation, interviewing over 200 people, including Shanae's friends, co-workers, neighbors, and employees and visitors of Matatsminda Park. They examined the roots of the case and reviewed video footage of Shanae's movements on the day she went missing. In an expat Facebook group, a local woman reported hearing a woman screaming on the trails below Matatsminda Park around an hour after Shanae left home. Another woman in the same group claimed to have witnessed a disturbing scene on the mountain the day before Shanae went missing, in which a man was seen aggressively assaulting a woman in the same area where the crime eventually took place. At the same time, the laboratory analyzed the crime weapon and discovered a male DNA sample, but no matches were found in the Georgian police database. Consequently, the samples were sent to the databases of 194 Interpol member states for further checking. Witness interviews revealed that Shanae had no enemies, no history of conflict with anyone, and no association with individuals of questionable character, suggesting she may have been a random victim of a crime with an unclear motive. The police conducted a meticulous investigation, collecting genetic samples from several dozen individuals who could potentially have been involved in the crime, and subjected each to rigorous scrutiny. Following a thorough and multifaceted investigation, authorities were able to narrow down the list of suspects until they found a DNA match. 40 days after Shanae Brooke Edwards' death, the Georgia police released a statement announcing the arrest of a 33-year-old man, Rafael Marsokolov, a Georgian citizen born in 1988. The evidence gathered during the investigation, including testimony, surveillance footage, genetic tests, and other proof, led to his arrest on September 8th. Marsokolov's lawyer stated that his client denies all charges, including robbery and the murder of Shanae Brooke Edwards, and has pleaded not guilty. The lawyer claimed that Marsokolov was not involved in the case and has chosen to exercise his right to remain silent. After Marsokolov's identity was made public, his image was broadcast on television. A woman from the Georgian capital took to Facebook to share a post revealing that her friend had been attacked by two men on Mount Matatsminda a few months prior. And although the police were aware of the perpetrators' identities, the case was closed. She suggested that if the police had done their job properly, the Australian girl might still be alive. Additionally, Marsokolov's own Facebook page revealed that he was an activist for the ruling Georgian Dream Party. On September 10, 2021, the Tbilisi court denied Marsokolov's request to be released on bail while awaiting trial, instead keeping him in custody. The police had obtained strong physical evidence, as well as damning testimony from Marsokolov's brother and wife, who revealed that Marsokolov had confessed to the crime at home. He warned them that if they told anyone about his involvement in Shanae Brooke Edwards' attack, their young child would face the same fate. In October 2021, the Edwards family wrote a heartfelt letter describing Shanae's personality and expressing gratitude to everyone who had supported them. They specifically thanked the government of Georgia for its financial assistance in repatriating Shanae's body and the Georgian people for their ongoing love, attention, and support during this difficult and tragic period. In February 2022, the first hearing on the case took place under Georgian law. Marsokolov faced a possible sentence of 16 to 20 years in prison. At the trial, he chose not to remain silent and pleaded guilty to robbery. However, he denied intentionally taking Shanae's life. The prosecutor disagreed, pointing out that the 13 stab wounds, including 5 to the neck, indicated Marsokolov's intent to kill the victim. After his knife broke, he even strangled Shanae. The defense claimed that Marsokolov has mental health issues and was in an abnormal state when the crime occurred. However, a psychological examination found him to be sane, allowing the court to impose a meaningful punishment based on the severity of the crime. The prosecutor noted that Marsokolov's blood tested positive for powerful drugs at the time of his arrest, but this did not diminish his guilt. Marsokolov admitted his guilt and apologized to Shanae Brooke Edwards' family in his final statement. According to the alleged motive, Marsokolov had intended to steal Shanae's iPhone 12, But his plan was foiled when she threw the phone into a ravine. Only 2 people knew what happened that day, and sadly, one of them is no longer alive to tell the tale. The prosecution requested a postponement of the sentencing, as the victim's brother, Tyson Edwards, wanted to attend the hearing. In a statement, Shanae Brooke Edwards' family urged the Georgian justice system to impose a life imprisonment sentence on Rafael Markelov, citing the tragic and devastating loss of their loved one, who left behind many grieving friends and family members. On March 9, 2022, a trial was held, at which Rafael Markelov was found guilty. Representing the family, Shanae's brother Tyson again requested that the defendant be given a life sentence. Markelov apologized to Tyson Edwards, claiming he was not that kind of person and had simply found himself in this situation. Ultimately, 33-year-old Rafael Markelov was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment, the maximum penalty allowed under Georgian law. The case of Alexandria Kostial. Alexandria Ally Kostial was born on September 11, 1997, in St. Louis, Missouri. From an early age, her warm and caring personality drew people to her. She had a remarkable ability to make others feel at ease and happy, which made her a well-loved figure in her community. Ally's friendly nature allowed her to connect with people from all backgrounds. She was never afraid to approach someone new and start a conversation. Her kind and compassionate heart was evident in her willingness to help others, whether it was by lending a hand or simply listening to those in need. During her time at Lindbergh High School, Ally was an active student who participated in track and cheerleading. It was there that she met her best friend, Maddie Norris, and they formed a lifelong bond. Their friendship was built on mutual trust and a deep emotional connection, going beyond a typical friendship to become more like sisters. After graduating from high school, Ally enrolled at the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, in Oxford, Mississippi. Although several boys had asked her to prom, she didn't have a date. Luckily, her friend Maddie stepped in and offered to be her date. At Ole Miss, Ally joined the Alpha Phi sorority as a founding member and became the president of the Ole Miss Golf Club. She also immersed herself in the university's rich traditions, including its mascot, the Ole Miss Rebels. At a campus party, Ally met Eliza Brick, and they instantly clicked, as if they'd known each other for years. Ally's passion for capturing stunning sunset shots became a mission. One night, while out at a bar in downtown Oxford, Ally met Brandon Thydell from Fort Worth, Texas. She found him cute and developed a crush on him. However, Brandon's behavior ultimately hurt Ally, as she had trusted him to make an effort to connect with her and her best friend, Maddie. In July 2019, Ally's parents, Cindy and Keith, visited her in Oxford for a few days before her senior year at Ole Miss. They were excited to see their daughter thriving at the university and experience her life there. On their scheduled departure day, July 19th, Cindy called Ally around 7 p.m. Still half asleep from a nap, Ally mentioned her plans to go out with friends that evening. Unbeknownst to Cindy, this ordinary conversation would be her last with her daughter. About 30 minutes from Oxford lies Sardis Lake, a vast area popular for its hunting camps and recreational spots. On June 20th, 2019, an officer was tasked with patrolling the lake in the early morning hours when it was still dark and eerily quiet. While driving around the lake, the officer came across something unusual near a picnic table. Upon closer inspection, he was met with a grisly scene: a young woman's lifeless body, riddled with at least 9 gunshot wounds. The discovery of the body, later identified as Ally, at Sardis Lake prompted authorities to notify her parents, Cindy and Keith. However, the couple was far away in St. Louis, unaware of the tragedy that had unfolded. A middle-of-the-night phone call shattered their peace, informing them of the devastating news that their daughter had fallen victim to a homicide. After hearing the tragic news, Ally's friends took to social media to mourn her loss and call for justice. They created the hashtag #JusticeForAlly to bring their voices together and make their demands for justice louder. In their social media posts, Ally's friends shared happy memories of her and the positive impact she had on their lives. These heartfelt tributes aimed to celebrate Ally's memory and offer sympathy to her family. After Ally's tragic murder, her friends and community mourned the loss of a vibrant and joyful person. Cassandra Kendrick, a recent University of Mississippi graduate and close friend, expressed her sorrow. Brash, another recent graduate who worked in student housing, described Ally as someone with an infectious happiness and a positive outlook. According to Brash, Ally always had a big smile on her face, reflecting her bright spirit. Brash met Ally while working as a community desk assistant in Crosby Hall, the largest residence hall on campus. Ally would often stop by and chat with Brash when they were on duty. Brash remembered Ally as a sweet girl who lived life to the fullest and cherished every moment. Ally's sorority, Alpha F, issued a statement after her murder, expressing shock and sadness at the loss of one of their members. They extended their deepest sympathies to Ally's family during this incredibly difficult time and hoped for comfort for their sisters. Anna Pascoe, another close friend from the University of Mississippi, posted on Facebook to express her heartfelt condolences for the loss of her friend. She described Ally as the most genuine and uplifting person she had ever known, emphasizing the significant impact Ally had on the lives of those fortunate enough to have met her. Emily Groh, a fellow cheerleader of Ally at Lindbergh High School, took to Twitter to express her shock and sadness over Ally's murder. She cherished the time they spent together on the squad, praising Ally's bright and positive attitude. Emily regretted not having had the chance to get to know Ally better. At the Sardis Lake crime scene, where Ally's body was found, investigators discovered several cans of White Claw seltzer and .40 caliber shell casings scattered on the ground. A ballistic expert was called in to analyze the scene and piece together what had happened. The expert's findings revealed that the killer had initially sat across from Ally on the picnic table benches when they fired the first shot. However, after the first shot, the killer stood up and began circling the table, moving closer to Ally with each step. The expert theorized that with each step, the killer fired at Ally again. One of the rounds fired by the killer missed its target and got stuck in the wooden picnic table. Crime scene investigators searched Ally's apartment, looking for any clues that could help identify and catch her killer. During the search, they found her Apple Watch, but surprisingly, her phone was nowhere to be found. Yet, some of her messages from the previous night had mysteriously synced with her watch. The investigators examined the content of these messages and discovered that Ally had been chatting with Brandon at length. The messages revealed that Ally and Brandon had planned to meet up. The detective in charge of Ally's murder case contacted Brandon on Sunday, the day after her murder, and asked him to come to the police station for an interview. Brandon told the detective he was unavailable that day, but offered to meet the next morning at 8:30 a.m. However, Brandon failed to show up for the scheduled interview. Following his no-show, the police began tracking his cell phone. The phone's location data showed that Brandon was driving on Interstate 55, heading towards Memphis. The police issued an arrest warrant for Brandon, suspecting he was fleeing, and broadcast a "Be on the lookout" alert for his vehicle, which was easily recognizable due to its unique license plate. 2 hours later, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force spotted Brandon's car at a gas station, where he was sitting at a pump. The agents apprehended Brandon and notified the Mississippi police. Upon searching Brandon's vehicle, investigators found a .40 caliber gun. Additionally, when Brandon exited the car, they noticed bloodstains on his clothing. Once Brandon was arrested and extradited to Mississippi, detectives started reconstructing his activities in the days preceding Ally's murder. On Saturday, July 20th, Brandon spent the day with friends, going bowling. The next day, he visited another friend's house, bringing a 6-pack of beer and his .40 caliber gun. The friend reported that they talked for a while, but when he woke up on Monday, Brandon had left. During the investigation, detectives found that Brandon had no history of physical fights or violence. They also gathered information from Brandon's friends and allies' loved ones, who said that the couple had met at a local bar in Oxford during their freshman year and started dating casually. However, their relationship took a turn for the worse during their sophomore year. Ally's loved ones noticed that she became more invested in the relationship than Brandon, causing tension between them. This led to Brandon blocking Ally's attempts to contact him because she would often go out, get drunk, and call him. 1 year after their initial separation, Brandon and Ally rekindled their romance during the summer before her senior year. They decided to give their relationship another chance and started dating again. However, their reunion was short-lived, as Ally was tragically murdered, and Brandon was subsequently charged with capital murder, which carries the death penalty. Capital murder is the most severe criminal offense, and the state accused Brandon of kidnapping Ally by luring her to Sardis Lake. The news of Brandon's arrest sent shockwaves throughout Oxford, with the details of Ally's murder being widely reported. The arrest sparked widespread speculation and rumors among community members who exchanged various theories. Reporters flooded the town, seeking interviews and information from those closest to Ally and Brandon. This media frenzy brought both positive and negative attention to Oxford, as outsiders watched with a mix of fascination and concern. In September 2019, Brandon pleaded not guilty to Ally's murder. As detectives built their case, they reviewed the couple's text messages. In April 2019, 3 months before her murder, Ally was preparing for spring semester finals and considering the possibility of being pregnant. On April 14th, Ally sent Brandon a photo of an inconclusive home pregnancy test. Brandon responded, saying they would wait to confirm the pregnancy, but if it was true, he was against keeping the baby. He suggested Ally could get an abortion pill. Ally, however, was unsure about ending the pregnancy. She mentioned the possibility of meeting someone who would love her and the baby. Despite Ally's doubts, Brandon remained firm in his decision, telling Ally he was serious and that having a child would ruin his life. Detectives found CCTV footage showing Ally leaving a bar on Oxford Square around 11:45 p.m. on July 18th. About an hour later, around 1:30 a.m., Ally met up with Brandon, who drove them to Sardis Lake. According to Brandon's lawyers, both Ally and Brandon had been drinking throughout the day. Brandon's lawyers claim that when they arrived at Sardis Lake, they sat at a picnic table, listened to music, and at some point, Brandon got up to do drugs by his truck. He then returned to Ally, went back to his car, and got his .40 caliber gun. A shooting allegedly took place across the lake, according to Brandon's lawyer. After the incident, Brandon sat back down and talked with Ally for a while. However, things suddenly took a deadly turn when Brandon shot and killed her. Brandon's lawyer argues that his actions were caused by his intoxication from drugs and alcohol. Detectives and Ally's family saw the incident differently. They suspected Brandon of murder because they thought he believed Ally was pregnant, and this would ruin his life. In their view, the killing was a deliberate, cold-blooded, and well-planned act. On August 27, 2021, Brandon accepted a plea deal, spared from the death penalty, and pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Ally's loved ones, wearing her favorite color pink, filled the courtroom to show their support. After the judge announced the sentence, Brandon addressed Ally's family, expressing remorse for his actions and asking for their forgiveness. He acknowledged the immense pain he caused and hoped they could find it in their hearts to pardon him. Ally's autopsy report concluded that she was not pregnant at the time of her murder. However, this does not rule out the possibility that Ally was pregnant at some point. Ally's mother, Cindy, firmly believes that Ally was pregnant and lost the baby. A memorial was set up at Sardis Lake, where Ally was murdered by her family and friends. Her parents, Cindy and Keith, hold on to memories of their daughter, even though the silence is still painful for them. Every time Ali's friends see a pink sunset, they think of her. They have devoted themselves to keeping her memory alive, working to spread her positivity and make sure she is never forgotten. The case of Graciela Graciela. Graciela Graciela was born on October 6, 19, in Mexico, to a working-class family who sought a better future for their children. To achieve this, her parents made the decision to immigrate to the United States, ultimately settling in Hermiston, Oregon. As Graciela was very young at the time of the move, she has no recollection of the challenges associated with relocating. Upon reaching school age, Graciela attended Umatilla High School, an institution that predominantly served students from low-income backgrounds. The school provided all students with free meals, reflecting the socioeconomic status of its student body, of which 66% were Hispanic. It was here that Graciela's sociable nature and innate charm enabled her to effortlessly form friendships among her peers. After graduating, she proceeded to enroll in the business department at Blue Mountain College. From a young age, Graciela had always dreamed of becoming a hairstylist and owning her own beauty salon. With determination and hard work, she believed she could make her dreams a reality. By February 2006, she had achieved her goal and became the owner of Cuz Beauty Salon. Graciela's talent and charisma quickly made her a well-known figure in society. As the salon's owner, she always presented herself well, which added to the salon's positive image. Her passion for her job and understanding of the latest beauty trends ensured a steady stream of clients. Over time, some of these clients became close friends, who were always welcome at her home. Graciela was highly respected in the town, not only for her professional success but also for her interesting and happy personal life. Her first love, with whom she had 2 daughters, Annabelle and Gabriella, also known as Gabby, was someone she met in her youth. Although the relationship didn't last long, and the father of her children left the family, Graciela didn't let this setback hold her back. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and continued to move forward as a single mother. Graciela later earned a degree in cosmetology. She then met a kind-hearted man of Mexican descent named Romero Sanchez, and they got married. Her children from a previous relationship reported that she never regretted this decision. Her husband was caring not only to her but also to her children, treating them as his own. The family later welcomed 2 more children, Arthur and Jacob. Although he had biological sons, Graciela's husband still affectionately referred to Annabelle and Gabriella as his girls. Gabby considered her stepfather to be her real father, as he consistently supported, protected, and cared for them. The couple prioritized keeping their family united and happy, raising 4 children together. This did not deter Graciela from pursuing her passion. Instead, she would often take her children with her to professional meetings. The family developed a lovely tradition of traveling together, exploring new cities, local attractions, and cultural features. They also prioritized staying connected to their roots, frequently visiting Mexico and enjoying quality time together. Everyone made a genuine effort to make each other happy. However, after 17 years of marriage, the couple decided to separate. Graciela and her ex-husband chose not to burden each other with their dwindling feelings, opting to preserve the respectful relationship they had built over the years. Even after the divorce, they maintained a warm and strong connection. The father remained involved in the children's lives, regularly seeing them and sharing custody of their youngest son with Graciela. The other children were grown and lived on their own, but they remained close to their parents. They would get together to celebrate holidays and often sought each other's advice. Graciela handled her divorce well, remaining optimistic and confident, thanks in part to her ex-husband's kind and understanding behavior during this challenging time. On November 9, 2019, Romero made an unexpected visit to Annabelle, Graciela's eldest daughter. Annabelle was surprised to see her mother's new husband show up unexpectedly. Romero told Annabelle that Graciela had disappeared. According to Romero, he and Graciela had met with Jacob the previous night. Afterward, Romero returned home and went to bed beside Graciela, who was already asleep. However, when he woke up in the morning, Graciela was gone. He searched the house but couldn't find her. Romero tried to contact Graciela by calling and texting her, but she didn't respond. He went to Annabelle's place hoping she might have some information about Graciela's disappearance. Annabelle, however, had no idea where her mother was. She was shocked not only by the news of her mother's disappearance but also by Romero's reaction. He was in tears and seemed genuinely upset. Annabelle found this odd because Romero had never shown any strong emotions around them before, only indifference. Romero mentioned that Graciela had been acting strangely and might have found someone else. He admitted she might have needed a break from their relationship and wasn't sure if she was truly happy with him. However, Annabelle found his words insincere and his tears overly dramatic. She started to worry about her mother and found Romero's behavior suspicious. Romero had previously avoided talking to Graciela's children, but suddenly reached out to them. After he left, Annabelle told the rest of the family what happened. They gathered at Graciela's house to figure out what was going on. Her car was still parked in the driveway, which was unusual since she would have likely taken it if she were leaving Romero. The house was also spotlessly tidy, which was out of character for Graciela, who preferred a more creative and chaotic space. If she were planning to leave, her belongings would have been scattered around the room. Graciela spent a considerable amount of time in front of the mirror, carefully selecting an outfit for the day. However, she surprisingly left all her treasured jewelry at home, including her favorite rings and necklaces that she wore daily. This unusual behavior raised concerns among her family members, who couldn't help but imagine worst-case scenarios, including the possibility of her fleeing. While searching the house, Gabby stumbled upon something peculiar, a large, heavy blanket in the washing machine. This was unusual because their mother, Graciela, always emphasized the importance of not overloading appliances. It was likely that Romero, who normally didn't participate in household chores, had washed the blanket. This sparked suspicion that he might be trying to conceal something. It was later discovered that along with Graciela, several important items had gone missing from the house, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone. On November 11th, Annabelle went to the police station to report her mother, Graciela, missing. However, she was surprised to find that Romero, Graciela's husband, had not informed the police about her disappearance, despite knowing about it since November 9th or possibly earlier. As a result, Annabelle became the first person to file a missing person report for her mother. Romero's distant personality had been a concern for Graciela's family since they met him. Graciela had met Romero at her beauty salon, where he was a client, after her divorce. Their initial friendship eventually developed into a romantic relationship. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they noticed his aloof and cold demeanor. Annabelle and her sister, Gabby, tried several times to connect with Romero, but he did not reciprocate, leaving Graciela's children puzzled by his behavior. They initially attributed it to individual personality differences, especially compared to their mother's previous relationships. They were eager to understand their mother's partner and what motivated him. At times, he seemed strange and aloof to them, and they struggled to comprehend how someone as lively and joyful as their mother could be drawn to someone so serious and reserved. Despite their reservations, they respected her decision. When their mother shared the news of her upcoming wedding, everyone rallied around her, particularly the girls, who wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests couldn't help but notice Romero's haughty demeanor and restraint. Some even perceived him as excessively possessive, as he dominated the bride's attention. When Graciela's young children came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero responded with disdain rather than warmth and affection, making it clear that he didn't want to share his wife's attention with anyone, not even her own family. After that, Graciella's relatives struggled to hide their genuine opinions about Romero. Annabelle even went so far as to say she didn't consider him a stepfather, let alone a father figure. The family simply wanted to have a normal relationship, like those found in any civilized household. Following the wedding, Graciella and Romero moved in together, along with her youngest son Jacob, into Graciella's home. Jacob shared that shortly after the wedding, Romero started behaving as if he was the sole owner of the house. The boy recalled that the initial honeymoon phase was brief, and soon the family started to fall apart. He observed that his mother initially tried to establish personal boundaries, but being non-confrontational, she quickly gave in to Romero's demands. This seemed to suit Romero, who had a quick temper and never apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the household, Graciella often conceded to Romero's wishes. As time went on, it seemed she realized she had rushed into the marriage without fully thinking it through. In private conversations, Graciella confessed to feeling trapped and suffocated in the relationship. Her husband exerted control over her, never allowing her to go anywhere alone. Despite this, she never expressed any desire to leave the abusive relationship, suggesting she was still in love with Romero. Everyone realized that Graciella was in a relationship with the wrong person. It became apparent that her partner, Romero, was jobless and financially dependent on her. The Graciella family, who valued hard work, found it frustrating that Romero was always by Graciella's side without any apparent reason. Romero was a master manipulator who kept a close eye on Graciella, monitoring her interactions, including her friendships with other women. He would either prevent her from going out or show up unexpectedly, as if checking on her loyalty. His extreme jealousy was suffocating. Graciella felt embarrassed by his behavior, which led her to isolate herself socially, only interacting with her family. This had a negative impact on her professional life, as her job required frequent client meetings and attending industry events. Those close to Graciella noticed a significant change in her demeanor. She looked sad, worn out, and had lost her usual cheerfulness. It was clear that she was unhappy. Even her children observed the changes in her mood and appearance, as well as her loss of independence. They discussed their concerns among themselves and concluded that, although they didn't like Romero, he was Graciella's choice, and they had to respect her decisions. Other relatives shared the family's distrust of Romero. However, no one knew how to intervene or offer support. The couple's issues were serious enough to require professional help. Gabby had once suggested this to her mother, but Graciella insisted on handling her personal life independently. In 2018, Graciella suddenly announced that she would relocate her beauty salon to her home, citing convenience. Her family was skeptical, as she had never mentioned this plan before, despite running the salon for 12 years. Some clients noted that Romero often hung around the salon, creating tension and disrupting the usually warm atmosphere. While some thought Graciella made the move to solve a problem, others suspected that her jealous husband was behind the decision. Despite the initial doubts, Graciella remained enthusiastic about the change, saying it allowed her to spend more time with Jacob and Romero. By the end of 2018, she and her husband were remodeling a room for the salon, but the project took longer than expected and wasn't completed until May 2019. Although the salon was closed temporarily, Graciella's reputation remained intact, and rumors of the studio's reopening attracted a long queue of clients, including new ones, months in advance. Graciella was thrilled with her professional success but became increasingly private about her personal life. Return to the moment before of Graciella's disappearance. Another incident raised concerns about Graciella's safety. She asked her daughter Gabby to pick her up, which was unusual. But she claimed everything was fine and said she was just having a disagreement with her husband. When they met up, They spent time together and Graciela seemed to relax. She smiled and told Gabby not to worry, saying that couples' arguments are normal and can actually bring people closer together. Despite this, Gabby couldn't shake off her worries and remained uneasy about her mother's situation. After Annabelle contacted the police, the relationship between Graciela's family and Romero rapidly deteriorated. He offered an explanation for his wife's disappearance, suggesting that she might have wanted some time alone or could have left with another man, and he believed she would soon return. This was his standard response to anyone inquiring about the situation. However, the police took the report seriously and initiated an investigation, considering the possibility that Graciela could have been a victim of a crime. They began by searching her home, where they found that only a few personal items were missing, with nothing else seeming out of the ordinary. The police also interviewed Graciela's children, her husband, and others close to the family, including her ex-husband. Although everyone expressed skepticism about Romero's behavior, the investigation did not uncover any significant information. Romero cooperated with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, participating in interrogations, providing his DNA, and undergoing a polygraph test. Despite his cooperation, the police did not have sufficient grounds to arrest him, so the investigation continued. Analysis of Graciela's phone records revealed her last known location was near a bridge in Washington on November 9th at 12:30 p.m., when the signal stopped after her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media remained inactive. Despite questioning hundreds of witnesses and checking all her frequent locations, investigators found no signs of her. The investigation deemed her disappearance suspicious due to the complete lack of evidence. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston police publicly stated that they had no confirmed information about Graciela's last sighting. Although Romero didn't report Graciela missing, the authorities didn't accuse him of anything. The police's stance frustrated Graciela's relatives, causing them to reduce communication with law enforcement. The family eventually stopped receiving weekly updates, forcing Graciela's children to contact the police station directly for information. As of March 2020, there were no new developments in Graciela's case. In an effort to revive the investigation, Graciela's family reached out to the media, hoping to raise public awareness and gather information. They believed even small details could be crucial. Gabby, a family member, expressed the family's frustration and disappointment with the police's lack of progress in the case. The Graciela family urged investigators to focus on finding Graciela, as they suspected foul play due to the state of her belongings and the unusual circumstances at home. It was unclear who would harm her, as she had no known enemies. Her family knew she wouldn't leave without contacting them, and the lack of communication suggested something was seriously wrong. The family also requested a new detective team, citing concerns of bias and collusion with Romero, whom they believed was somehow connected to the case. The family pointed out numerous inconsistencies in the investigation. It was found that Romero's phone had been turned off on the day his wife went missing, and his actions didn't seem like those of someone who was worried about a loved one disappearing suddenly. The Graciela family asked for Romero to be arrested. Police Chief Jason Edmiston quickly responded to these claims. He agreed that Mrs. Graciela's disappearance seemed suspicious and might involve something criminal. He said this was just one idea, but promised that the investigation would stay fair and be based on evidence and facts. Edmiston also denied that Romero had any connections to the police that might affect the case. Edmiston mentioned that false information was spreading and making the investigation harder. He said the case was ongoing and that some information had to be kept secret. The police also asked the FBI for help. Edmiston expressed frustration that people were criticizing the police without understanding how complicated the law is. At the same time, Gabby started a fundraiser to hire a private investigator. This move was seen as criticism of how the police were handling the case, suggesting they weren't doing their job well. 1 year after Graciella's disappearance, her family and friends held a memorial event to honor her memory and pray for her safe return. They lit candles and posted signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue searching for her. In September 2023, a significant development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez, Graciella's husband, was severely injured in an attack. There was speculation that Mason Graciella, Graciella's brother, was involved in the incident, but details and any potential consequences for Mason were not disclosed. It appeared that Graciella's family had become frustrated with the police's lack of progress in investigating Romero, leading to a potentially frightening outcome. Graciella's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in unbearable uncertainty that's taking a devastating toll on their health. Her children are left with only prayers, hoping for clarity and justice, unsure if she's alive. The case of Natasha Cournoyer. Natasha Cournoyer, 37 years old, has gone missing suddenly and without any notice. She didn't visit her mother, respond to phone calls, or return home. As the day went on, it became clear that none of her friends or colleagues had seen her either. Her worried relatives reported her missing at 5 p.m., prompting a police investigation. Natasha worked as a public relations specialist for the Correctional Service of Canada. Detectives began by interviewing her co-workers. Upon arrival, they found her car still parked nearby. A nervous-looking man, Michel Trottier, was standing by her vehicle. He claimed to be in a relationship with Natasha and was trying to figure out where she might have gone. The back door of Natasha's car had scratches, but it was unclear if they were related to her disappearance. With no reason to suspect Michel Trottier of involvement, detectives continued their investigation. Co-workers reported that Natasha was at work on October 1, 2009, the day before she vanished. She seemed to be in a good mood, friendly, and untroubled, with no signs of anything amiss. On October 2nd, Natasha needed a day off to deal with issues related to her recently deceased father's tombstone. To make up for time, she worked longer hours on October 1st and left the office around 8 p.m. According to her friends, Natasha was a kind and open person with no known conflicts or enemies. The police launched a large-scale search for Natasha, involving aviation and canine units. Initially, they focused on the area around the parking lot but found no clues to aid the investigation. Natasha's friends and relatives distributed flyers with her photo, hoping someone might have information about her disappearance. The first few hours after a person goes missing are crucial in finding witnesses or evidence. However, in Natasha's case, valuable time was lost because the police weren't notified until the evening of October 2nd, 21 hours after she left work. The search for Natasha took place from October 3rd to 5th, but unfortunately, no leads were found. Her family offered a $10,000 reward for any information that could help locate her. Natasha's boyfriend, Michel Trottier, suspected she had been kidnapped and made a televised plea for her safe release. Meanwhile, the police were investigating their personal lives. They had been together for 4 years, but their relationship had been rocky, with multiple breakups and reconciliations. The police explored all possible scenarios surrounding Natasha's disappearance. They reviewed CCTV footage from her workplace, both inside and outside the building. The footage showed Natasha arriving at 9:04 a.m. and leaving at 8:07 p.m. She had parked her car in a poorly lit area of the parking lot, and the cameras captured her walking towards it. However, she eventually disappeared from view due to the darkness. After a few minutes, the car headlights turned on and the car started moving, but instead of heading towards the exit, it drove to the opposite side of the parking lot, which was also poorly lit. The car stopped and the headlights went out. The vehicle remained in this position for about 20 minutes before moving towards the exit. It was determined that this car was not Natasha's, as she owned a Mazda. Further investigation revealed that the car in the video was a Ford Windstar minivan, which had entered the parking lot at 6:35 p.m. and parked next to Natasha's car. Based on the video footage, the police concluded that Natasha Conoyer's disappearance was likely a kidnapping. On the fifth day of the search, October 6, 2009, the focus shifted from finding a missing person to investigating a homicide. Natasha's body was discovered in a vacant lot in the Point Au Trumbull area, approximately 20 miles from her workplace. The body was located next to a dirt road that led to the riverbank. The news of Natasha's death devastated her relatives and friends, who were further disturbed by the medical examiner's report. According to the report, Natasha's cause of death was strangulation. Additionally, she had suffered 9 facial injuries, including a broken nose, and had marks on her wrists and ankles indicating that she had been bound. Seminal fluid was also found inside her body, which would serve as a source of DNA evidence. While awaiting DNA analysis results, detectives attempted to identify the owner of a minivan captured on camera the day Natasha vanished. In 2009, there were 2 motels near Natasha's workplace. On October 16, 2009, 10 days after her body was discovered, police visited both motels to review guest registration cards. At the Lido Motel, they found a guest who had registered a Ford Windstar. The guest was 48 years old Claude LaRouche, a registered sex offender with 2 prior convictions. In 1993, Claude was sentenced to 1 year in prison and 2 years of probation for coercing a 19-year-old acquaintance into sex. In 2005, he received a 40-month prison sentence for attempting to kidnap a 7-year-old girl. She managed to escape and run to a neighbor's house. Claude's 40-month sentence for the attempted kidnapping of a child raises questions about the severity of his punishment. In November 2008, Claude was released and started working as a carpenter. He married a woman with 2 sons, and they all lived together in a house about a 10-minute drive from where Natasha Conoyer disappeared. Detectives found out Claude checked into a motel the night Natasha went missing. Forensic experts examined the motel room and discovered dark red stains on the carpet, which they sent for analysis. The same day, detectives visited Claude at his home. Since he had a prior prison record, the police already had his DNA on file. However, they needed time to compare it to the DNA found on Natasha's body. Claude claimed he didn't know Natasha but admitted to frequently visiting the Lido Motel because it was cheap. He told the detectives he was unhappy with his intimate life with his wife and often rented a motel room to meet women offering paid sex services. When asked about his whereabouts on October 1st, the day Natasha disappeared, Claude said he couldn't remember anything, including staying at the Lido Motel. He attributed his memory loss to excessive substance use, but his memory partially returned soon after. On November 5, 2009, a month after the body was discovered, detectives returned to Claude LaRouche's house. This time, however, it was not for a conversation. DNA analysis revealed that the seminal fluid found in Natasha Conoyer's body matched LaRouche's. Additionally, Natasha's DNA was detected in the motel room Claude rented and inside his car. Montreal police say there's no link between the crime and Conoyer's job at Correctional Service of Canada, and the victim didn't know the suspect. Following Claude's arrest, Montreal Police Inspector Daniel Rousseau stated that citizens could now feel safer in public. The news of the arrest shocked Claude's neighbors, who described him as a friendly and polite individual. The next day, on November 6, 2009, Claude LaRouche became a suspect in Natasha Conoyer's case. Initially, he denied any wrongdoing, but faced with substantial evidence, he confessed to taking Natasha's life. However, he claimed her death was accidental and not intentional. During his 2011 trial, 2 differing accounts of the events emerged, one from Claude and his defense team, and the other from the prosecution. According to Claude's testimony, He was waiting in a parking lot for a drug dealer on the evening in question. While sitting in his car, Natasha appeared beside him. He then attacked her, forced her into his vehicle, and shut the door. Afterwards, Claude conversed with Natasha, and she allegedly agreed to accompany him to a motel. Claude LaRouche experienced memory lapses, which left him unable to recall why he stood in the parking lot for 20 minutes or what he did during that time. However, he conveniently remembered specific moments that worked in his favor. According to LaRouche, Natasha offered to satisfy his demands in exchange for her freedom while they were in the motel room. He agreed, but after she fulfilled his requests, they got into an argument. Claude lost control, attacked Natasha, and ultimately strangled her. He then cleaned the room, moved her body to his car, drove home, and went to bed. The next morning, after the substances he had taken wore off, he realized the gravity of his actions. Claude chose to get rid of Natasha's body. As he drove to the location where the body was later found, he cut her documents and bank cards into pieces and threw them out the car window. However, it's crucial to remember that this account comes from LaRouche himself, and the more he shared, the more inconsistencies and questions emerged about his claims. According to Claude's testimony, the day after disposing of Natasha's body, he returned to the scene and covered her with a blanket, fearing she would freeze. He revisited the body again the next day to retrieve the blanket, worried that it would hinder her discovery. LaRouche's statements suggest that his actions were influenced by a clouded consciousness, leading to illogical decisions. He claimed he did not intend to take Natasha's life, which he attempted to convey to those present during the trial. The prosecution's case relied on physical evidence and a witness testimony. The witness stated that while walking his dog near the parking lot on the day Natasha disappeared, he saw Claude attempt to attack a jogger around 7 p.m. However, Claude retreated when he noticed the witness and his dog. Natasha Conoyer was attacked an hour later. The prosecutor was convinced that Claude had bound and abducted Natasha, taking her to a motel where she ultimately lost her life. In June 2011, Claude LaRouche was found guilty and received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. During the trial, it was revealed that just 2 weeks after Natasha's murder, Claude attempted to strangle another woman, Dominique Martel. However, she managed to fend him off by biting his finger. As a result, Claude was deemed a dangerous offender under Canadian law, rendering his prison sentence indefinite and significantly reducing his chances of early parole. Natasha had a peaceful and fulfilling life, with aspirations and objectives, all of which were brutally taken away by a man with a history of serious crimes. Despite his past, Claude was allowed to roam free, living among the community without adequate supervision. The fact that he had previously attempted to kidnap a 7-year-old girl raises questions about how he was able to reintegrate into society without proper monitoring. Natasha's loved ones continue to grapple with these unanswered questions, haunted by the thought that if the system had functioned correctly and Claude had been held accountable, Natasha might still be alive today. The case of Gretchen Harrington. Gretchen Harrington was born on June 13, 1967, in Pennsylvania. She was the youngest of 3 sisters, and her family moved to the small town of Brawl shortly after her birth. Gretchen's father, a pastor, took a job at the local church, and Gretchen quickly grew to love the town. She spent much of her free time outdoors with her sisters and friends. Brawl was a safe community where parents felt comfortable letting their children play outside until dark. As a member of a devoutly religious family, Gretchen spent much time at her father's church and excelled in Sunday school, always getting top grades. On August 15, 1975, Gretchen's family was eagerly awaiting the return of her mother and newborn sister from the hospital. Gretchen wanted to be home to greet them, but her father encouraged her to attend Sunday school to keep up her grades. Gretchen reluctantly agreed to go to church and set off with her Bible. Her older sisters, who usually walked with her, stayed home that morning. However, Gretchen wasn't worried about the short 8-minute walk to church. Sunday school is divided into 2 sessions. The first session takes place at Trinity Church and lasts an hour and a half. After that, some of the children go to Father Gretchen's church. But when the children arrived at the second church at 11:30 a.m., Gretchen's father noticed that his daughter was not there. He assumed she might be at the first church, so he called to check. The pastor's wife answered, informing him that Gretchen was not there. She then told her husband, David, who was a Sunday school teacher. He was surprised by the news, since Gretchen had not attended his class that morning. Gretchen's father became worried when he couldn't find her. He asked David to contact the police and started searching the area between the churches and nearby streets, but she was nowhere to be found. He also reached out to the parents of her friends. But they were either at church or home. Her best friend, who was also David's daughter, hadn't seen her all day. As news of Gretchen's disappearance spread, the police quickly launched a search operation. Hundreds of volunteers joined in, many of whom knew Gretchen's father from his church. Together, they searched the entire town, then moved on to wooded areas and the riverbank. A police helicopter was also deployed to scan the area from above. The search continued through the night, but to no avail. The next day, more volunteers joined in. Police posted flyers with Gretchen's photo and information about her disappearance along the roads. Despite their efforts, police were unable to find Gretchen. After several days of searching, no significant clues were found and Gretchen's fate remains a mystery. The town is known for its safe environment, where children are often allowed to play outside freely without adult supervision from a young age. However, this sense of security is no longer there when Gretchen goes missing. Some people thought she might have run away from home, while others believed she had gone swimming in the river and drowned. However, the most alarming theory was that she had been abducted by someone. As a result, parents became extremely cautious and stopped letting their children go out alone. Police interviewed bystanders. They gathered some clues. One witness reported seeing a girl who looked like Gretchen near the church on the morning she went missing. According to the witness, a green sedan approached the girl, but the witness did not see what happened next. Another person shared a similar story, but this time described a white Cadillac approaching the girl. Police checked the owners of cars matching the description in the area. 4 days later, detectives received a new lead. A resident of Westchester, a town 30 minutes from Brawl, contacted police and reported finding children's shorts matching the description of Gretchen's clothing. Police immediately showed Gretchen's mother the shorts. But she confirmed that they did not belong to her daughter. The investigation into Gretchen's disappearance had stalled, with no progress made for several weeks. As a result, the police halted their search operation and shifted their focus to gathering more information. They continued to interview witnesses, but with each passing day, their hopes of finding Gretchen alive began to dwindle. Until October 14th, when police received a phone call. A jogger was running in a large national park, about 20 minutes from Brawl, when he stumbled upon a body. The jogger immediately alerted park rangers, who then notified the police. Upon arriving at the scene, police quickly determined that the body was that of a child. However, due to the severe state of decomposition, identification of the child was extremely difficult. Police suspected that Gretchen might be the victim, so they showed her parents the clothes found on her body. Gretchen's mother quickly identified them as her daughters because she had sewn them herself. Forensic experts later confirmed that the body was Gretchen's by comparing them to her dental records. They also determined that she had died from severe head trauma. Because the body was so badly decomposed, police were unable to gather further information, including whether Gretchen had been sexually assaulted. Additionally, DNA analysis was not available in 1975, leaving police without any further leads. News of the murder sparked renewed interest in the case, and police received numerous tips from the community. The investigation into Gretchen's death turned up no leads. Police screened nearby residents with a history of violent crime, but nothing came up. Months later, the case had made no progress. Over the years, the case was reopened periodically, and the police reviewed the available information. However, each time, the investigation yielded no new evidence. Even applying DNA analysis was of no help in this case, as no foreign DNA was found on Gretchen's body or clothing. The case of Gretchen's murder went unsolved for decades, occasionally resurfacing in newspapers and on television. However, it wasn't until recent years that the case regained widespread public attention. Two local journalists, Joanna and Mike, decided to write a book about the crime, dedicating several years to gathering information. As children, both Joanna and Mike grew up in the same town as Gretchen. Joanna, who was only 9 years old when the crime occurred, the town had changed forever, and children were no longer allowed to roam freely. Leave home unsupervised. This fear lasted for years, leaving a lasting impression on the townspeople, the memory of Gretchen's murder still fresh in their minds. To write their book, Joanna and Mike had access to the case files and interviewed individuals involved in the investigation. By carefully piecing together the events surrounding Gretchen's disappearance, they were able to reconstruct the entire story. The book, released in 2022, brought attention to Gretchen's case. Months later, a woman contacted police about Gretchen. The woman said she was 10 years old at the time of the murder and lived in Havertone, near Gretchen's home. She was friends with Gretchen and her sisters, as well as many other kids in the area. She often slept over at friends' houses, and one night, while she was at her sister's house, she woke up in the middle of the night feeling someone touching her. When she opened her eyes, she saw their father standing in front of her, who quickly left. The next day, she stayed another night. Her friend's dad continued to come into her bedroom and started touching her. The next morning, she finally told one of her sisters about what happened to her. She was surprised that it happened quite often with her friends. When the woman returned home, she shared her entire story with her parents. However, instead of going to the authorities, they banned her from ever going to her friend's house again. This was just a week before Gretchen went missing. The woman eventually revealed the identity of the man involved in her story, David Zandstra, the same pastor who taught at Sunday school. She also shared that a month after Gretchen went missing, one of her friends told her about the incident, that a man had tried to kidnap her. The girl refused to get into his car and later confided to her friends that the real culprit was David Zandstra. The woman provided her personal diary as evidence of the information provided. In her diary entry on September 15, 1975, she documented her friend's request to keep the encounter secret due to fears of potential harm from David Zandstra. Upon receiving this new information, the police immediately reopened the investigation into Gretchen's disappearance. While reviewing the case files, detectives discovered several suspicious factors that indirectly implicated David Zandstra. It was David Zandstra who reported Gretchen missing to the police, providing investigators with a detailed description of her clothing: dark blue zip-up shorts with front buttons and pockets without zippers or buttons, and a white shirt with braided hair. However, he mentioned that he had not seen Gretchen that day, raising questions about how he knew what she was wearing. His description was later confirmed by the discovery of her body, dressed exactly as he had described. Police closely examined David, the man who taught Sunday school at Gretchen's father's church. David initially claimed he had not seen Gretchen on the morning of her disappearance. However, David's alibi gave him enough time to kidnap Gretchen, kill her, dump her body in the park, and return to the church to teach. The investigation revealed that David and his family had moved to another state just months after Gretchen went missing. This sudden move, combined with David's ownership of a green scooter, attracted the attention of the police. The police decided to question David, who was now 83 years old and living in Georgia. On July 17, 2023, they began questioning David. As the conversation progressed, David realized that the police suspected him of murder. In response, he denied all accusations and asked what evidence they had against him. David was confronted with incriminating evidence, including a woman's testimony about his inappropriate behavior at a sleepover and allegations of molesting his own daughter. When he learned that his secret had been exposed, David's demeanor changed. After 48 years of silence, he finally began to talk about the murder. According to David, on the morning of the murder, he drove his green American motor station wagon to the church where Gretchen's father was the pastor. He saw Gretchen leave the house and waited until no one was around before approaching her. He offered her a ride, and she agreed. However, instead of taking Gretchen to the church, David drove her to a secluded park area. He stopped the car and instructed her to undress, but Gretchen refused and asked to go home. In response, David struck her several times on the head, causing her to lose consciousness. He then removed her clothes and committed the crime before driving her to another park. He carried her body into the bushes and concealed it with branches. David then returned to the church to begin his classes. When David confessed to the crime, the police arrested him for Gretchen's murder. David went to Pennsylvania, where he was held pending trial. David's work held a respectable position in society, which protected him from suspicion. However, after the truth finally came to light, the police obtained a DNA sample and began comparing it with DNA from other unsolved cases. They also investigated the disappearances of young girls in the cities where he worked. Police have linked David to the disappearance of 4-year-old Amanda Campbell from California, who went missing in 1991. The case resembles Gretchen's. At the time, David Zanstra was a pastor in that same neighborhood. The police currently have no concrete evidence against David, but they have found similarities between the various cases and Gretchen's kidnapping. Therefore, they are investigating David as the possible perpetrator of the cases. The trial for Gretchen's murder has not yet begun. David's attorney is trying to delay the process and advise him to withdraw his confession. If this happens, the trial could drag on for years, and given his advanced age, David may not live to see the verdict. The case of Rebecca Payne. Rebecca Payne was born on April 19, 1986, in New Milford, Connecticut, to Virginia and Nicholas Payne. She was their only child. Rebecca attended New Milford High School, graduating in 2004. During her high school years, she was an active athlete. After high school, Rebecca enrolled in Northeastern University in Boston, where she pursued a degree in athletic training. This 5-year program focused on the care and prevention of athletic injuries. In her 4th year, Rebecca held leadership positions, including a spot on the Dean's Council and serving as president of the Athletic Training Club. She played a key role in organizing the university's vision for the Future Athletic Training Leadership Forum and was also involved with the Episcopal Lutheran Center. Rebecca was known for her friendly and approachable nature. She had a large circle of friends and was always willing to lend a helping hand. At 6:30 a.m. on May 20, 2008, Boston police received a call from the manager of the Parker Hill apartment complex. The man was in a panic. He told the police that he had seen a door ajar in a 3rd-floor apartment. A 22-year-old student, Rebecca Payne, lived in the apartment. When he knocked on the door and called her name, no one answered him. And he decided to go inside. There, he immediately saw dark red spots and stripes on the floor that led him to one of the rooms. He found Rebecca lying on the floor, with no signs of life and her belongings scattered. When police arrived at the crime scene, they observed that the front door showed no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Rebecca may have known her attacker and may have let herself in willingly. Her third-floor apartment had 2 bedrooms, and Rebecca's body was found face down on the floor in the bedroom. A trail of blood led from the living room to the bedroom, suggesting that the attack occurred in the living room, as there were traces of shell casings in that room. Forensic examinations showed that Rebecca had been shot 5 times. Blood stains in the apartment suggested that she had been conscious for some time, attempting to crawl to the bedroom before losing strength. Her valuables were still there. The state of disarray in her apartment was suspicious, leading police to believe that the perpetrator may have deliberately created the mess to distract them. Additionally, the mess may have been caused by Rebecca's struggle for life. When they searched the apartment, police observed that both the balcony door and the front door were open. Signs in the second bedroom suggested that someone else had been living there. Identifying this person became a top priority for the police, as they were likely Rebecca's killer. After speaking with the apartment manager, police discovered that Rebecca lived with another student in her apartment, prompting police to begin searching for the student. At the same time, police interviewed residents of Parker Hill Apartments, some of whom reported hearing a woman scream and gunshots between 3 and 4 a.m. Unfortunately, no one reported the incident to the police. Rebecca Payne's tragic death left her parents reeling, not only from the loss of their daughter, but also from the appalling indifference of their neighbors. Despite hearing Rebecca's screams and gunshots, no one called for help. Rebecca's parents described her as a vibrant and compassionate young woman. She had a big heart and was known for putting others before herself, always looking to help those in need. In the aftermath of her death, police interviewed residents of the apartment complex where Rebecca lived. One man, who lived on the first floor, reported seeing a black SUV approach the building at night. However, due to the darkness, he was unable to see the car's license plates or identify who got out of the vehicle. The apartment building where the crime took place had both internal and external surveillance cameras. However, when police asked the building manager for the footage, they discovered that the cameras only allowed for real-time viewing. The outdated equipment required a video cassette to be inserted into a VCR and manually recorded, but no one had done so. Given this information, along with the fact that the manager was the one who found Rebecca's body, police began to suspect him of the crime. As a resident of the building, he had constant access to Rebecca's apartment and was aware that the surveillance cameras were not being monitored. The suspicion against the manager grew when a background check revealed his past run-ins with the law, specifically related to prohibited substances. Furthermore, an officer noticed dark red stains on the front door of the manager's apartment, which were swabbed and sent for examination. The manager was taken to the police station for questioning, where he denied any involvement in Rebecca's death, claiming he spent the entire night in his apartment with his wife. The police also spoke with his wife to verify his alibi. The woman's husband was initially a suspect, but his wife provided an alibi for his whereabouts during the night of the crime. Laboratory results showed that the dark red stains on his apartment door were just paint, leading the police to release him due to lack of evidence. Police investigating the case reviewed video and photo materials from the scene and focused on a public transportation card found near the crime scene. This card, used to pay for public transport in the Boston area, stores data on its usage, including the location and time of each use. Traffic police provided police with surveillance camera footage of the card being used. After reviewing the recordings, police determined that the card belonged to Rebecca and was used by her on the night she went missing. The footage showed Rebecca walking home, appearing calm and alone, with no signs of anyone following her. Unfortunately, this discovery did not lead to any new leads on the identity of the offender. The police obtained another video from a surveillance camera located outside the hospital building, near the Parker Hill Apartments. This video captured a black SUV driving by at the time of Rebecca's attack. Although the video was poor quality, preventing the officers from seeing the license plates, it did appear to match the description given by the witness, and the detectives police it was a Ford vehicle. Meanwhile, detectives interviewed Rebecca's roommate at the police station. The roommate expressed shock at Rebecca's death and stated that she had been living with her parents while studying for an exam. This alibi was verified by her parents, clearing her of suspicion. However, the conversation was still fruitful, as she provided potentially valuable information that could aid the investigation. According to Rebecca's roommate, Matt, Rebecca's boyfriend, had access to their apartment. To determine if Matt had a motive to harm Rebecca, police reached out to him by phone. Matt explained that he had moved to New York State to live with his parents around the time of the attack. He claimed to be depressed over Rebecca's death. Matt stated that he had been staying with his parents, and they confirmed his alibi. Police obtained a record of Matt's cell phone activity, revealing a conversation with Rebecca on the night of the attack, around midnight, a few hours before her death. However, the cell tower that received the signal from Matt's phone was located near his parents' house in New York State. To verify Matt's alibi, police conducted an experiment and concluded that it would have been impossible for him to drive from his parents' house to Boston in 3 or 4 hours, making it unlikely that he committed the crime. As a result, Matt was ruled out as a suspect. Rebecca's family and friends traveled to her home state of Connecticut to say goodbye, but the police investigation into Rebecca's death stalled. Despite their efforts, no new evidence was found, no witnesses came forward, and no DNA samples were collected. The case appeared to have reached a dead end. Years went by. In 2012, a breakthrough occurred. Anthony White was arrested by the Boston police for trafficking illegal substances and faced a lengthy prison sentence. In an attempt to reduce his sentence, Anthony offered to provide police with information about the night Rebecca Payne died. Recognizing this as a potential opportunity to solve the long-standing case, the police accepted Anthony's offer. Anthony declared that, on May 20, 2008, Anthony received a call from Cornell Smith, an acquaintance involved in the same illicit activities as him. Cornell requested a meeting, and Anthony agreed. Cornell arrived with their mutual friend Michael Balba, who drove a black SUV. The three of them went to the Parker Hill Apartments, where Michael parked in a spot with a clear view of the building. When Cornell spotted Rebecca in a third-floor window, he identified her. They waited until the lights in her apartment went out, assuming she had fallen asleep. Cornell then climbed from the first-floor balcony to the third-floor balcony, where he found the door to the apartment open. However, upon entering, he found Rebecca awake and lying on the couch in the living room. She began screaming when she saw him, and a brief struggle ensued. Cornell shot her 5 times before fleeing the apartment through the front door and escaping with Anthony and Michael in the SUV. Police questioned the credibility of Anthony's testimony, suspecting that he had fabricated the story based on news reports in order to get a reduced sentence. Police did not understand Cornell's motives, as Rebecca had no connection to him. However, according to Anthony, Rebecca's death was a case of mistaken identity. 2 sisters who lived on the first floor of Parker Hill Apartments looked very similar to Rebecca. The sisters were Cornell's rivals in the illegal drug trade. In retaliation, Cornell targeted Parker Hill Apartments, but he was not sure which floor or apartment the sisters lived in. When he saw Rebecca at the window, Cornell mistook her for one of his enemy sisters. Police looked into Cornell Smith's past and found that in February 2008, he was arrested for dealing illegal substances. Shortly before Rebecca's death, Cornell was released on bail. According to Anthony White's statement in 2012, Cornell wanted revenge against the sisters. However, when Anthony White came forward, Cornell Smith was already serving a 12-year sentence in prison for another conviction. With Anthony's new testimony, Cornell was then also charged in Rebecca's murder. Cornell denied his involvement, though. Before the case could go to trial, the key witness, Anthony White, died in prison. There was no longer any evidence to prove Cornell's involvement in the murder of Rebecca Payne. Since Anthony White was dead, the police needed new testimony from Michael Balba, who was with Anthony and Cornell on the night of the murder, in order to convict Cornell Smith. Michael was arrested and taken to the police station, but without evidence, he denied involvement and requested a lawyer. As a result, hopes of solving the case seemed lost. In a final attempt to find the connection between Cornell and Rebecca's death, the police looked into Cornell's case files in connection with a separate case of drug trafficking. During the search, the police came across letters written by Cornell Smith to the judge. These letters revealed Cornell's arrogant attitude towards others, some of which seemed meaningless. However, one letter contained a crucial piece of evidence that linked Cornell to Rebecca's death. It remains unclear why these letters had not been scrutinized earlier, despite being addressed to the judge. The discovery of this key evidence ultimately helped police build a case against Cornell. In a letter written out of anger, Cornell referenced an altercation that had taken place in downtown Boston, leading to the unfortunate death of Rebecca Payne at the hands of Cornell. This letter confirmed that Cornell was in Rebecca's apartment at the time of the incident. The trial took place in 2015. Jeffrey Karp, a defense attorney with more than 20 years of experience, was the first attorney to represent Cornell. However, Jeffrey withdrew from the case after an incident. Cornell suddenly stood up and struck Jeffrey Karp in the head with his handcuffed hand, causing chaos in the Suffolk County Superior Court in Massachusetts. Jeffrey Karp then opted not to prosecute, instead allowing the judge to appoint a new attorney for Cornell. Cornell Smith took a plea deal and pleaded guilty to taking the life of Rebecca Payne as part of the deal. He received a prison sentence of 18 to 20 years from the judge. To honor Rebecca's memory, her hometown renamed the local tennis court after her. A garden and a National Athletic Trainers Association scholarship fund have also been established in her name. According to Rebecca's father, Nicholas Payne, these tributes were created with one main goal in mind: we don't want her to be forgotten. The case of Ryan Widmer. Sarah and Ryan Widmer met at a favorite coffee shop. Ryan ordered a cup of coffee while Sarah was waiting in line, and happened to see a book on his table that she had just finished reading. Their shared interest in literature opened up their first conversation. Gradually, they spent many hours discussing common topics such as books, movies, music, and daily routines. Through the conversation, they discovered that they both loved nature, travel, and animals. After each meeting, their relationship became closer and more trusting of each other. Their understanding and trust grew more and more. Finally, their relationship developed into love. After a few months of dating, Ryan proposed to Sarah at a romantic sunset at the same coffee shop where they met. Sarah felt very happy and agreed to the proposal. The young couple planned their wedding and found a 2-story house in Hamilton. Finally, on April 10, 2008, their wedding took place. They chose a small church to hold the wedding ceremony, with the participation of close friends and beloved family. Everything, even the smallest details, was planned by Sarah in a special way. On the important day, Sarah looked gorgeous and beautiful, and Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding and the party, the couple decided to go on a honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks exploring the beautiful paradise and enjoying time together. At this time, they were deeply in love and had already planned for the future, dreaming of having children. On the evening of Monday, August 11, 2008, after finishing work at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at a cafe. They had dinner and talked happily. After that, they walked home. Sarah packed her groceries and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a headache pill. He gave her a bath, and they finished watching their favorite TV show together. Sarah went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, folded her clothes neatly, prepared a towel, lit a scented candle, and turned on her favorite music. Ryan pressed the button on the TV remote, pausing a few times on the football game. He lay on the couch for no more than 10 minutes. He called his wife, but Sarah didn't hear him, so he slowly went upstairs. In the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV and called Sarah again. There was silence. In a panic, he went into the bathroom, where he found Sarah lying face down in the bathtub. Ryan unplugged the bathtub and took out his phone to call 911. At 10:49 p.m., under the direction of the police, Ryan finally got Sarah out of the bathtub and performed CPR on her. Within 6 minutes, an ambulance and police were at Ryan's home. An initial inspection of the scene caught the attention of the police. The bathroom was dry and clean, with no signs of water or scattered objects. Sarah was lying on the bedroom floor, naked, her skin dry. Only her wet hair suggested she had drowned. A paramedic performed CPR when there was no pulse. A pinkish-white fluid flowed from Sarah's nose and mouth. 2 attempts to intubate Sarah while she was lying on the bedroom floor were unsuccessful. Sarah was then rushed to the emergency room and 2 more attempts were made to bring her heart rate back to normal with a defibrillator, both unsuccessful. During this time, Ryan remained by his wife's side. Within 20 minutes of arriving at the hospital, they attempted to revive Sarah, but at 11:41 p.m., an emergency room doctor pronounced her dead. Ryan knelt in the hospital hallway and cried. Relatives and friends of the couple could not have imagined that just 4 months after their wedding, a tragedy would strike that would shock the entire city and make Ryan the prime suspect in Sarah's death. When the police questioned him at the hospital, Ryan's initial statements raised suspicions. Ryan claimed that he and his wife had been home that night. They had dined out, returned home, and watched TV. Then, because his wife had a headache, Ryan gave her painkillers and led her to the bathroom. Some details in Ryan's statement did not match the emergency call records. The victim had collapsed face down, while Ryan said his wife was lying face up. This discrepancy made the police question Ryan's statement. Ryan was deeply shocked by what had happened. He kept calling Sarah's name. Under pressure from the police, Ryan was forced to participate in the investigation to find out information about Sarah's death. He agreed to allow his house to be searched. Analysis of the medication Sarah had taken showed that it was a common painkiller commonly used to treat headaches and migraines. However, she had been taking a course of medication that altered her hormones and caused her to fall into an uncontrollable sleep. After searching the house, traces of blood were found on the carpet. During the investigation, the police discovered several signs that made them suspicious of Ryan's story. When they arrived at the scene, the bathtub and tiles were dry with no signs of water. No wet items, clothing, or other items were found in the house that could have soaked up the water. The autopsy revealed that Sarah had several injuries to her body, including bruises to her head, neck, armpits, and lips. However, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. Sarah's fingernails were intact, not broken or chipped. This does not fit the theory that Sarah was murdered after a struggle. Sarah's autopsy, conducted by Dr. Russell Appointment Grove, showed that she died of drowning. During the autopsy, experts also discovered multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of her neck and bruises on her head. These injuries were determined to have occurred before her death. However, the cause of these injuries is still unknown. Toxicology tests ruled out the presence of illegal substances or alcohol in Sarah's blood. This makes the question of what caused her death even more difficult to answer. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. The charge was based on the emergency call, a scene that did not match the reality, and the injuries on Sarah's body. This was enough to charge him with murdering his wife. Ryan and Sarah were very much in love, as friends and neighbors confirmed. They never argued or fought in public and always planned their lives. What caused Sarah's death? In March 2009, the first trial began with emergency line officer Ron Cronenberger taking the stand. He described the phone conversation with Ryan as calm and relaxed. However, Ron Cronenberger also said that Ryan appeared to be just blowing into the tube, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that the information from the 911 call, the scene, and Sarah's injuries were enough to prove that Ryan killed her by forcing her underwater and drowning her in the bathtub. The main piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police examined the bathtub for fingerprints and found what they believed to be human handprints. These were located closer to the middle of the bathtub. Using a reflective ultraviolet photographic process, fingerprints and stains were found on the bathtub. A fingerprint was found on the forearm, and hair follicle testing determined that it was left by an adult male, but the age of the fingerprint could not be determined. The police called in a medical expert, who testified that falling asleep and dying in a bathtub was unlikely unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to the expert, the sensation of water on the face could have awakened the person or triggered a reflex response to the airway. Otherwise, the reduction in oxygen in the muscles would have likely awakened the victim. In addition, the pathologist who performed the autopsy was called to testify. He stated that if Sarah had a dry body and wet hair, a likely explanation would be that her head had been pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. She could have been pushed forward or backward, in running water or in a full bathtub. According to the prosecution's case, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and on that basis, he should be convicted. Ryan's defense attorney argued that he was innocent, and that he had no motive to kill Sarah. The attorney said that if there had been a violent struggle, as the prosecution argued, there would have been evidence of that. However, there were no injuries on Ryan, and Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. The attorney said that the injuries found on Sarah were the result of prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and multiple attempts at intubation that night in the house, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital itself. At the defense's request, a second autopsy was performed. Dr. Werner Spitz performed a second autopsy and again confirmed that the cause of death was drowning. He observed injuries to her neck, arms, upper lip, skull, a lacerated liver, and bleeding from her neck, but could not determine whether these injuries were due to CPR. Those present argued that the paramedics had been trying to resuscitate Sarah for about 45 minutes and that the deep bleeding inside Sarah's neck could have been caused by N4 being inserted into the area because paramedics could not reach the veins in her arms. Instead of ruling it a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled Sarah's death undetermined. The defense said her skin was dry because it dries faster than her hair. They also said that when Ryan found his wife unconscious, he pushed the drain in the bathtub, tried to help her, and called emergency services. This chain of events explains why her body was drier than expected. The water had drained out of the bathtub even before Ryan called 911. However, it is not yet known whether the jury's verdict would have changed if they had received credible evidence that Sarah's medical condition could have caused the drowning. The official reason for denying a new trial was that the jury had made errors in its investigation. Ryan was surprised when Jennifer Cruz came to the prosecutor's office to testify about Ryan's guilt. She said she was friends with Ryan and that he had been in regular contact with her by phone or email. According to Jennifer's testimony, he called on October 26, 2009, at 11:09 p.m. In a very upset voice, he told her that he had beaten Sarah in the living room on the day of her death. Sarah had discovered his infidelity and had seen inappropriate photos. They had argued for a long time, first downstairs and then in the bedroom. Ryan pushed her into the bathroom and left his wife there without checking to see what had happened to her. He was angry, and after calming down, he found Sarah floating in a bathtub full of water. To cover his tracks, he wiped up the water on the bathroom floor with a towel and came up with a plan for the accident. Ryan's attorneys worked hard to prove his innocence. They tried to throw out Jennifer's testimony because they thought it was unreasonable. One obvious example was that no towels were found in the house, including the dryer. And there was no evidence of infidelity in their marriage. The family had no financial problems and never argued. Ryan was described by friends as a kind and helpful person who never showed anger. Ryan would not benefit from his wife's death because he did not have a life insurance policy. Before the third trial began, Jennifer was discredited and barred from testifying. The call that Ryan allegedly confessed to her was not authenticated. In January 2011, a trial was held based on new evidence. The defense argued that Sarah had underlying medical conditions that could have caused her to suddenly lose consciousness and drown. Several medical experts testified in support of the defense, stating that some heart or neurological defect could have led to the loss of consciousness. However, the state's medical experts disagreed with this assessment. The trial also revealed additional details about Sarah's health and daily routine. Her co-workers testified that she often slept in her car before going to work at the dental office due to severe allergies and stomach aches. On the day of her death, Sarah had complained of headaches and stomach aches to her dentist boss. That evening, Sarah talked to a friend and mentioned her headaches and neck pain, and her friend said she looked extremely tired. Her ability to fall asleep quickly led her friends to think she might have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness. People with narcolepsy often have difficulty staying awake and need to take frequent naps to cope. However, Sarah's mother, Ruth Ann Stewart, disputed this idea when she testified as a prosecution witness at trial. She claimed that she had never seen her daughter have sleep problems and described Sarah as a healthy, active child with a regular daily routine. Sarah's medical records also supported this claim. As a dental hygienist, Sarah had undergone regular checkups and her last checkup showed no signs of health problems. In addition, other witnesses who claimed Sarah was excessively sleepy gave unconvincing testimony. In cases where a person tries to strangle another from behind, the victim often suffers defensive injuries to the arms and legs, as well as injuries to the small bones in the neck. However, Sarah's autopsy did not show any such injuries. The defense urged the jury to consider all the facts surrounding the case, that Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. Once again, the defense was defeated. After about 12 hours of deliberations, Ryan was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury based their decision on the lack of water on Sarah's body and around the bathtub, and that Ryan's call to 911 was staged. One juror felt that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the main reasons he believed Ryan was guilty. When the autopsy photos were shown, they felt that Ryan was completely unresponsive. Ryan did not take a stand, although he told the court after the verdict was announced, he loved his wife. He did not hurt her. Ryan remains in custody, awaiting a federal court ruling that could determine his parole status. After 14 years in prison, his first chance for parole will be in July 2025. With each passing year, Ryan holds out hope that the next year will bring him freedom. He continues to maintain his innocence and profess his love for Sarah, insisting that he did not harm her. Ryan's chances of parole in 2025 appear slim, as the parole board tends to favor inmates who show remorse. Since Ryan has always maintained his innocence, he could face an uphill battle for parole. The case of Amber Belkin. Amber was born on December 6, 1981, in San Antonio. An only child, her parents said she was very energetic, ambitious, and responsible. Before her disappearance, Amber had worked as a manager at a video game store for nearly 3 years. On January 29th, she was scheduled to work an extra shift. Although the store opened at 10 a.m. to welcome customers, Amber usually arrived around 9 a.m. to prepare for the workday. As part of her morning routine, she would take the previous day's earnings from the safe and deposit them at a nearby bank to minimize the store's cash holdings. On a typical day in January, Amber, as usual, arrived at work around 9 a.m. The store where she worked was part of a large international chain. However, that day, Amber did not open the store by 10 a.m. Around noon, the regional manager contacted the manager of another store in San Antonio and asked him to drive over and find out why Amber had not deposited the money and the store was not open yet. Amber also did not answer phone calls, which raised suspicion and concern. Mariano Rivera was the employee who went to check on Amber. When he arrived, he noticed a white car that looked like Amber's. However, the store entrance was locked, and when he looked through the glass door, he saw no one inside. Mariano knocked on the door several times but received no response, so he left. 2 hours later, he returned to check the store again. This time, through the window, he saw Amber's assistant, Brandon. Mariano knocked and Brandon let him in. Mariano asked Brandon if he had seen Amber, but Brandon said no. Brandon explained that he had just arrived and noticed something unusual in the store. There were papers and CDs scattered on the floor, along with some money. Mariano entered the back room and made a horrifying discovery. Amber's body was lying on the floor, face down, with a plastic bag covering her head. Mariano quickly called 911. And the police arrived at the scene and cordoned off the area. Forensic experts later determined that her cause of death was strangulation. Police discovered that Amber had not deposited any money into the bank that day. The store's safe was also found empty, indicating that a robbery had taken place. It appeared that the robbers had come across Amber and decided to kill her to prevent her from being a witness. After reviewing Amber's schedule, police determined that the crime occurred between 9 and 10 a.m. Unfortunately, the lack of surveillance cameras at the store hampered their investigation. To proceed, they interviewed the first people to discover the body, Mariano Rivera and Brandon Beal. The couple described their appearance and the circumstances surrounding their discovery. Store management reported that approximately $2,000 was missing from the safe, along with several video game CDs and 3 to 4 PlayStation consoles. The total loss was in excess of $6,000. Police interviewed employees of nearby businesses but were unable to gather any useful information as no one reported seeing or hearing anything suspicious. As police continued to process the crime scene, news spread throughout San Antonio, drawing a large crowd of media representatives to the store's parking lot. Amber's father, Randy Belkin, first heard about the incident on the news, and when he saw the address of the store where the crime took place, he immediately rushed to the scene. When he arrived, he spoke to a police officer who gave him the heartbreaking news that the victim was his daughter, Amber. He was shocked to hear this information. A short time later, Amber's mother, Lelia, also arrived at the store. She could see the pain in her husband's eyes and instinctively knew what had happened. Their only child was gone. When the police examined the crime scene, they came to a number of conclusions. The perpetrators appeared to have left through the back door, which explained why no one had seen them. It was clear that the perpetrators knew the store's schedule in advance, including the time the money was transferred to the bank, between 9 and 10 a.m. Furthermore, they knew that the store did not have surveillance cameras. This suggests that the perpetrator is likely a current or former employee, as this information is known only within the company. Brandon Beal, Amber's assistant, was the first person to be implicated in the crime. He was familiar with the layout of the store and went inside when a manager from another location came to check on Amber. When he arrived at work, Brandon found the store closed despite it being past its opening hours. He used a key to unlock the door, entered, and locked it. He saw signs of a struggle inside, but for some reason, he did not go into the back room to see if Amber was there and if she was okay. Police spoke with company management and discovered that Amber, the store manager, had expressed dissatisfaction with Brandon's performance and wanted him fired. Amber had told her mother about his bad temper and failure to perform his duties. However, police still need to determine whether Amber's negative opinion of Brandon was enough to make him commit the crime. After obtaining a warrant, officers searched Brandon's car and home, looking for the stolen CDs and PlayStation. However, they did not find any stolen items. Brandon told police that he arrived at the store around 2 p.m. and was surprised to find it closed. He used his keys to enter, assuming Amber was not there, and found the mess, leading him to believe the store had been robbed. A manager from another location arrived shortly afterward. Brandon admitted to having frequent disagreements with Amber but insisted he was unaware of her plans to fire him. He had a solid alibi for the time of the crime, confirmed by his girlfriend and parents, and passed a lie detector test, ultimately eliminating him as a suspect. 4 weeks have passed since Amber's death, but the police investigation remains stalled, with no new leads to pursue. There are growing concerns that the case may never be solved. Desperate for a breakthrough, Amber's parents have made a public appeal through the media, asking anyone with information about the case to come forward. A $100,000 reward has been offered for any information leading to an arrest, with $95,000 of that offered by Amber's company. Flyers with Amber's picture have been distributed throughout San Antonio. Yet despite all this, no progress has been made for the next 7 months, until one day a police station receives a crucial call. A man calling himself Joe contacts the police handling Amber's case and reveals that he knows who is responsible for her death. Joe alleged that Giovanni Rivera, 22, was the one who strangled Amber. When asked by police why, Joe explained that he, Giovanni, and Amber had previously worked for the same company. Joe added that on the day of the incident, Giovanni had called him to propose a robbery, targeting the specific store where Amber worked. This was no random choice, as Giovanni knew the store did not have surveillance cameras. The police asked Joe if he accepted Giovanni's offer and participated in the robbery, to which Joe replied no. If everything said was true, then the police's initial assumption that the crime was committed by someone very familiar with the store's routine was correct. The police asked Joe to come to the police station and give a formal statement. Initially, he refused. But perhaps understanding that the police would soon find him, Joe went to the police station 2 days later. Joe explained that Giovanni had initially mentioned his plan to rob a store. According to Joe, Giovanni never said that he would harm Amber, but about a month after her death and after the case had been widely publicized in the media, Giovanni confessed that Amber's death was his doing. Joe said that he did not call the police immediately because he feared for his safety. And his guilt eventually overcame his fear, prompting him to contact the police. Although Joe's testimony was not enough to warrant an arrest warrant for Giovanni Rivera, it did prompt the police to summon him to the police station for further questioning. It should be noted that Giovanni Rivera and Mariano Rivera, the manager who discovered the body, were not related, they only had the same name. During his conversation with the police, Giovanni accused Joe of lying and denied any involvement in the crime. He then refused to answer further questions, forcing the police to release him. While the police were thinking about how they could bring him to justice, Giovanni moved to Laredo, Texas, with his family. Due to insufficient evidence, the police were unable to act and the case remained stalled for months. A crucial turning point in the case came unexpectedly. In June 2008, nearly a year and a half after Amber's death, Giovanni's wife, Veronica, contacted the police. She reported that Giovanni had attacked her, threatened her and their children with a gun, and also revealed to the police that Giovanni was responsible for Amber Belkin's murder. The police in charge of the case traveled to Laredo to interview Veronica in person. During their meeting, she expressed regret for marrying Giovanni, saying that she had become pregnant with him while still in school, and that her family had pressured them to marry. However, after the wedding, Giovanni's behavior changed dramatically, revealing a controlling and domineering personality. According to Veronica, he often forced sex on her, even tying her up with duct tape if she refused him. Veronica testified that when Giovanni was first called to the police station, he returned home looking very upset and quickly informed her that they needed to move to Laredo immediately. They packed their belongings and left San Antonio that same day. Veronica concluded that if her husband was innocent, there would be no reason for them to move. At one point, Veronica mustered up the courage to confront Giovanni about his involvement in Amber's death. Giovanni admitted to killing Amber. Veronica was shocked and asked why he did it. Giovanni replied that he did it because their family desperately needed money to pay rent. Veronica filed for divorce, which caused Giovanni to become violent. He drove her to a secluded location, where he pulled out a pistol and ordered her into the back seat of the car. He then followed her, threatening her and forcing her to comply with his demands. Giovanni then gave Veronica a gun and instructed her to shoot him. When she refused, he retaliated by threatening her, her children and her family. Veronica begged him to think about what would happen to their children if they were left without parents. This appeal seemed to work, and they returned home that night. However, the next morning, Giovanni declared that he was abandoning his family. As he drove away, Veronica immediately called the police and told them about her husband's confession. After Giovanni's wife joined Joe, another witness, to testify against him, the police obtained an arrest warrant. However, Giovanni escaped by crossing the US-Mexico border and hiding in Mexico. It took 6 weeks for the police to track him down and arrest him at a relative's house. The Mexican police agreed to extradite him to the United States only on the condition that prosecutors dropped the death penalty against him. These conditions were agreed upon, and when all the documents were prepared, Giovanni Rivera was handed over to the U.S. police. On August 7, 2008, Giovanni was questioned. In contrast to the previous conversation of the police, his wife's statement was brought up. When informed of this, he confessed everything. He said that as soon as Amber opened the door of the store, he followed her, wearing gloves and a mask. He was surprised when Amber recognized him. He told her that he was having financial problems and that he needed money, and he made her open the safe. A struggle broke out as Amber tried to grab the phone, prompting him to bind her with duct tape. When she panicked and began screaming, he covered her mouth with his hand, ordering her to be quiet. Amber tried to escape, but he reached a point where he felt he could no longer turn back. In a desperate move, he grabbed a nearby plastic bag and blocked her airway, eventually stopping her from breathing. After she became unresponsive, he took the store's money, several CDs, and several PlayStation consoles before fleeing in his car, which was parked behind the store. Giovanni's attorney offered a plea deal. The district attorney's office accepted the deal, which did not include a life sentence without parole, but was considered the best outcome for Amber's family given the risks and uncertainties of a jury trial and the possibility of appeal. As a result of this agreement, in April 2010, Giovanni Rivera was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Regarding the $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the perpetrator, the government has not disclosed whether the money has been paid to anyone. The case of Rudolph Farias. On March 7, 2015, Rudolph Farias walks with his 2 dogs. Afternoon, his 2 dogs came back separately to the front door of their home, dragging their leashes, but Rudolph was missing. Despite this, Janie relentlessly followed every small lead to find her son, but she was unsuccessful. Even with the many recent tragedies in the Santana family, Janie stayed determined in her belief that her son would be found. Speculation emerged that Rudolph's disappearance could be connected to his biological father. Rudolph's father, who was a law enforcement officer, was found dead from a gunshot wound in his patrol car. Before this, Rudolph's older brother had died in a car accident, and now Rudolph has vanished, leaving very little evidence to track him down. Janie, a resolute mother, was steadfast in not giving in to hopelessness. She took an active role in online forums to ensure her son's name and case stayed in the spotlight, hoping his story would not fade into obscurity. She believed that his disappearance might be linked to human trafficking and criticized the state police for their lack of action. Janie suggested there could be complicity within the law enforcement community, potentially shielding criminals and avoiding conflicts with powerful individuals. Ever since Janie started speaking out about the issue of human trafficking, she felt her safety was at risk. Her fears were confirmed when Rudolph's uncle, Jerry, died in a motorcycle accident on the second anniversary of his nephew's disappearance. Jerry had been actively involved in the search for the young man. On National Missing Persons Day, he gave an emotional speech about Rudolph's generous nature and compassion for others, highlighting the pain of a mother who has lost her child. Jerry never directly said that Rudolph had been harmed, but shortly before his unexpected death, he contacted the owner of a local social media outlet called Voice of Houston. This was a platform the family often used. Jerry wanted to schedule a meeting to share important information about Rudolph's case, which was planned for a week later. Sadly, Jerry died just a day before the meeting, suggesting he might have discovered sensitive information he wasn't supposed to. As interest in Rudolph's disappearance waned due to a lack of concrete evidence, Janie, with the help of volunteers and family members, created T-shirts with her son's image and shared his photos online. On the evening of June 29, 2023, a 911 emergency call reported finding an unconscious and injured young man outside the Immaculate Heart Church. That was a man in his 20s with minor injuries and bruises. After getting the emergency call, the law enforcement agents were uncertain about the man's identity. When he regained consciousness, the man was silenced, showed signs of fear and confusion, and had no ID or wallet. However, a crucial clue found in his pocket helped solve the mystery. Authorities identified the man as Rudolph Farias and contacted his mother, Janie Santana, to inform her. Janie recognized her son by his eyes and confirmed his identity, she quickly moving to his side and staying there constantly. After 8 years of despair, Rudolph's return felt almost miraculous to his family. Although he had not yet spoken to the authorities, it was expected that, once he was settled and at ease with his family, he would share his memory and explain how he ended up near the church, miles from home. Rudolph showed signs of physical distress, including leg ulcers, various cuts and bruises, and dried blood in his hair. However, these injuries could be treated. Janie took to her social media to thank everyone who helped keep the search for Rudolph ongoing. She acknowledged that she didn't have any new information about his whereabouts during the missing years, but was committed to supporting his recovery, his health. She mentioned that trying to discuss his past made him withdraw, become silent, and curl into a fetal position. Despite this, Janie was deeply grateful that her son had returned after such a long time away. Rudolph always kept a pendant of his late brother with him. However, the story took an unexpected turn when a credit card was found in his pocket, issued in Janie Santana's name just 2 years earlier, providing the police with a crucial lead in solving the mystery of his disappearance. Due to Rudolph's 8-year absence, the existence of a relatively new credit card in his mother's name raised important questions. As detectives investigated with Janie's neighbors and family members, they uncovered intriguing information. The local community was stunned to hear on national news about Rudolph's dramatic recovery. They were convinced they had seen him at his mother's house not long before, unaware there was a missing person case related to Janie. The collective surprise was amplified by media stories, especially since the young man they recognized wasn't called Rudolph, but Dolph. Although Rudolph doesn't have a twin, neighbors often describe Dolph as introverted yet approachable. He was frequently seen socializing on the street or joining card games in garages. While gentle and friendly, Dolph always seemed confused and usually walked his mother to her workplace in the evenings. Janie encouraged her son's involvement with the neighbors, suggesting they invite him to dinner or give small gifts to show appreciation for their kindness. Despite Rudolph, which is very similar to Dolph, it puzzled the neighbors how this situation occurred. It was eventually revealed that Dolph and Rudolph were actually the same person, who had been missing for nearly 8 years. However, questions arose. Why were all the news outlets saying that the boy had been found, especially when, according to the neighbors, he never went missing? If his mother knew this, why was she often participating in missing persons forums and posting melancholy updates on social media? Who really is Janie Santana? When Janie Santana met her most recent spouse, she was already a mother to Rudolph, while her future partner had a child from a previous relationship. They were on the path to forming a big blended family. The kids got along right away. Rudolph was thrilled to gain a brother, Charles, who was 8 years older than him. Everything seemed perfect until, a year after the wedding, the husband discovered that Janie was simultaneously married to another man, making this her 5th marriage. After separating from her previous spouse, Janie did not want to complete the divorce process and became hostile toward her partner. She was fined $43,000 for her unlawful actions. Moreover, her siblings sued her for neglecting their elderly mother, Rose, who suffered from dementia and needed constant care. Although the siblings were ready to take care of their mother, Janie convinced Rose that living with her and Rudolph was the best option. Finally, Janie got the right to take care of Rose, but she faces terrible living conditions at Jane's house. Rose lived in an unhygienic environment, forced to sleep on a dirty and wet couch. The house was filled with animal waste because it wasn't cleaned regularly. Rose even had to go to the hospital because of infected bed sores. Jane's siblings tried to talk to Rose, but her mental abilities were impaired. Janie showed no willingness to make changes, leading them to take legal action against Janie for keeping a home that was not clean, safe, or suitable for an elderly person. In court, they claimed she was a compulsive liar who didn't properly care for their mother. However, Janie's attitude toward Rose did not seem loving. Her family believed she was mainly interested in the financial benefits from the state for caregiving Rose. Janie appeared to be a dedicated single mother, but she had unusual habits, especially a strong obsession with social media. She spent her free time focused on her online presence, where she mostly interacted with herself. Janie created several fake profiles to comment on her own posts. She used these accounts to have detailed conversations, asking questions and responding as if she were different people. Her goal was to create the appearance of popularity on her social media, making her profile seem very active. Like many people, Janie enjoyed drama and often turned small matters into big ones. One day, her son Rudolph had a swelling in his leg after visiting the family doctor, who confirmed that the swelling was harmless. However, Janie quickly took him to the emergency room, urging him to say he had taken many pills to try and escape an alleged cancer diagnosis. After his hospitalization, Janie took and shared a photo of Rudolph in his hospital bed, making her audience believe he was battling cancer. Some online users speculated that Janie might be showing signs of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a condition where caregivers create or induce medical problems in those they care for to gain attention and sympathy by telling false stories of sacrifice and suffering. Despite this, children generally display different characteristics from their parents, and Rudolph was a clear example of this difference. Even though Rudolph's relationship was mainly his mom and her numerous partners, his personality was very different from Janie's. Rudolph was naturally compassionate and kind, always ready to help anyone in need, even if it was just a stray cat. As he grew up, he stood out for being shy, gentle, and introverted. Besides his mother, Rudolph's only true confidant was his beloved stepbrother Charles, who acted as both a father figure and an older brother. Rudolph looked up to Charles and wanted to follow in his footsteps, especially after Charles joined the Marine Corps. This motivated Rudolph to consider a career in the military as well. On a significant day, while Janie and Rudolph were at home, a phone call suddenly altered their lives. After receiving disturbing news, Janie, in a panic, rushed Rudolph outside. That day, Charles had been in a motorcycle accident near their home. The family, along with their mother, arrived at the scene before the paramedics. At only 13 years old, Rudolph faced the traumatic sight of his older brother dying by the roadside in Houston, an experience that deeply impacted him. On the first anniversary of Charles's tragic death, Rudolph, despite being young, used social media to express his grief. He recalled that it had been a year since Charles went to meet the Lord, regretting not having expressed his affection to him. Rudolph wholeheartedly wished his dear brother would come back. 3 years after Charles's passing, Rudolph's biological father also died, though they had barely had any contact. The father, a former police officer, was found dead in his patrol car. He had been dismissed from the force for falsifying reports and issuing excessive speeding tickets for personal gain. Over 3 years, he had illegally earned more than $150,000 through fake overtime. Facing humiliation and impending legal consequences, and unable to cope with the scandal and loss of his career, Rudolph, who essentially grew up without a father, had to accept the harsh truth that he would never have the chance to rebuild a relationship with him. This realization deeply affected his fragile mental state, stirring up feelings of resentment, sorrow, and anger. By the age of 16, Rudolph had already experienced the loss of 2 important people in his life, his stepbrother and his biological father. Despite having a mature understanding of grief, deep down, Rudolph still held on to the innocence of a child. His relatives noticed that emotionally, he was like a 10-year-old, trusting, gentle, sweet, and naively youthful. Time later, Rudolph suddenly disappeared. For the next 8 years, Janie shared the story of how he went missing after a routine dog walk, which usually lasted 15 to 20 minutes. When 2 hours passed without Rudolph returning, Janie felt a surge of motherly panic after hearing barking at the door. She hurried to check and found only one dog, its leash dragging behind it having come back alone. She guessed that Rudolph had gone to look for the other dog, causing his delay. The second dog didn't return until the next morning, but Rudolph was still missing. Janie was very upset when she called the police and accidentally gave the wrong birth date for her son. This caused the officers to think Rudolph was an adult. As a result, they didn't act quickly because they assumed the teenager had simply decided to leave home on his own. The search focused on the usual route Rudolph would take, where they found a backpack with notebooks and an asthma inhaler. Janie confirmed that these items belonged to her son, although there was no sign of criminal activity. The detectives considered the teenager missing, and Janie assumed the role of a worried mother. She quickly made and distributed posters with her son's picture all over the city, rallying the support of the police, family, friends, and the general community in the search effort, who showed empathy and offered their help. Over time, the story of Rudolph's disappearance faded as law enforcement personnel changed and the community moved on with their lives. Janie was the only one who remained dedicated to finding her son. She created a webpage for Rudolph's search, appealing to the public's empathy in raising over $2,000 in donations to support the effort. Over the years, As official investigations made little progress, Santana began using online forums and social media to express her worries. Feeling something was seriously amiss, she expressed her intention to travel to a town on the USA-Mexico border, believing that Rudolph had become a victim of human trafficking. She decided to embark on a personal quest to rescue him. Janie described the trip to her family and friends as dangerous and challenging, and she even started a fundraiser to pay for it. However, those who knew her suspected that Janie might be using Rudolph's situation as an excuse for a short vacation and a way to collect money. They had backed her before in similar ventures, dropping everything to join her in her travels whenever rumors of Rudolph's sightings popped up across the country. After each fruitless search, Janie would lament on social media the pain of being separated from her son, pleading with guardian angels to protect him while she was away. Through her posts, she would speak directly to Rudolph, expressing how much she missed him. Meanwhile, as she crafted these sorrowful tales, Rudolph was actually at home for 8 years. Janie had isolated him, keeping him behind a locked door. Although not physically chained, Rudolph experienced psychological imprisonment, losing his freedom. Rudolph became disheartened by the way he was treated at home, feeling that he were deeply disrespected, leading Rudolph to decide to escape. His attempt to break free took about 24 hours. By the next day, he was back home, a detail only Janie knew. It seemed like the mother had used this incident both as a punishment and as an opportunity to draw attention to herself. After a long walk with the dogs, during which he was gone for several hours, Rudolph wanted to apologize for the worry he had caused. But Janie told him that he was now wanted by the police. She made up a story about him getting a speeding ticket days before, and with his disappearance already reported, she hinted that the authorities believed he was avoiding legal consequences. Now labeled as a criminal, Rudolph, with no legal knowledge and trusting mother. Thus, he spent the first day locked in his room, which turned into a week, then a year, under his mother's manipulative influence. Every time visitors came, Rudolph would retreat to his room and remain completely silent, a prisoner in his own home. Rosa, Rudolph's grandmother, knew he was present and tried several times to tell her children. However, Rudolph's aunts and uncles ignored her, thinking she was just confused due to senile dementia. After the case was settled, Janie let her son go out occasionally to visit the neighbors, but now she called him Dolph. The missing person posters showed his photo at 14, so it's no wonder many didn't recognize him. His mother thought a childhood photo would evoke more sympathy from people. Sometimes, she'd give him her credit card and send him to the store to buy groceries or other things to keep him from realizing she was using him. Janie secretly added illegal substances and sedatives to his meals, which made him feel slow and unable to think clearly. She kept threatening him with jail and the police, so he reluctantly remained at home. There were many rumors about Janie's inappropriate behavior with her adult son. She would enter his bathroom without knocking and make Rudolph lie with her under the blanket without clothes. However, Rudolph suggested there were some intimate moments between them. He felt that his mother still treated him like a child and just acted as though he were her husband. The family also saw Rudolph in town more than once and reported it to the police. Uniformed officers would come to Janie's house and even look inside, but without a warrant, they couldn't enter. During this time, Janie acted calmly, not raising any suspicions among the officers. The cops would leave, saying the tip was false. No law enforcement officer, no family member, nobody could have imagined that Rudolph had been quietly living under his own roof, rarely going out. After enduring 8 years of being stuck at home, Rudolph came up with a plan. In the middle of the night, he grabbed his mom's car keys and credit card and sneaked out without a clear destination. Even though he hadn't driven in 8 years, he only managed to be behind the wheel for a few minutes before crashing the car, ending up with numerous cuts and bruises. He left the keys in the car and continued on foot until he reached a church. Exhausted, he collapsed. Janie posted a photo of Rudolph in a hospital bed on social media to gain sympathy. This picture was taken 8 years ago when he was hospitalized for a leg tumor. The authorities quickly tried to move Rudolph to a hospital, but his mother convinced them that his condition would worsen there, so she decided to take him home instead. In truth, she was worried that Rudolph would reveal the truth when he woke up. On July 5, 2023, Rudolph gathered enough courage to speak up and confided only in a local activist named Quell, known for advocating for the rights of discrimination victims. Quell helped people share their cases through media coverage and negotiations with law enforcement. Despite Janie's constant interruptions during the conversation, Rudolph managed to express his side of the story. Eventually, it became clear that Janie's presence was hindering the dialogue, and she was asked to leave the room. Rudolph showed signs of self-harm, reflecting the impact of his confinement. Despite feeling uneasy sharing a bed with his mother, he stressed his lasting love for her. Quell publicly expressed that a mother who did such things should face consequences for her actions and was surprised that Janie was not yet arrested. Quell was deeply moved by Rudolph's story. However, that very night, Rudolph went back home with his mother. Janie, trying to manipulate him emotionally, threatened to harm herself unless Rudolph withdrew his statement to the police, not knowing their conversation was being recorded. Meanwhile, Janie stuck to her false story. At a press conference, the police announced that they would not press charges against Janie for now, due to insufficient evidence of her wrongdoing. Rudolph is currently staying with a family friend, but it is unclear how far his mother might go to regain custody of him and attract more attention on social media. The International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which operates worldwide, reports that hundreds of thousands of missing children are reported every year, and that parents are often involved in these disappearances.